Ho, 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 and welcome to this festive happy times and places in which I, Toby Hadoke, get a friend to watch a Doctor Who story and choose their favourite things about it. I then do the same and see if I could choose the same favourite things. But it's really just a way of being positive with a Christmassy flavour.
Hello everyone, I'm Father Christmas, or you may know me as Santa Claus, or I believe some people even call me Papa Crimbo. I don't know whether I approve of that, but there we are. Anyway, I've had this letter from Stephen Hatcher. First of all, he wants me to apologise to Toby's listeners that he's turning up again in a bit. But it's such a privilege to be returning to happy times and places. You may have heard him talking about the Sea Devils a little while ago. Stephen tells me he's a retired teacher who organises the Hooverville Convention each year in Derby and occasionally does a little bit of writing. Well now, back in October 2022, he was talking to Toby at a Nigel Neal event at Quad in Derby when he offered to do another story for Happy Times and Places. He was delighted that Toby accepted, and he asked him to choose a 21st century story. So he picked 3, featuring his favourite modern Doctor, Peter Capaldi, telling Toby that he would be happy to do any of those 3. Well, Toby said he could do all 3 if he wanted to, so here he comes in a bit now, and he'll be back in due course, or alternatively he's already been back sometime in the past, nominating 2 more 12th Doctor stories. Right, well, Stephen tells me that Peter Capaldi is his favourite 21st century Doctor, so it would be really easy for him to pick something related to his performance for all 5 of his choices for all 3 of the stories. But so as not to be too boring, he's promised only to pick Peter Capaldi or the 12th Doctor once across those 3 stories. Well, there we are. I can't say fairer than that, can you? Well, I'll be getting off now, and I'll leave you in Stephen's hands. I think he's going to be along shortly. I think I can see him coming. I think he's been feeding the reindeer outside or something like that. Anyway, I'll cut along, and I'll see you shortly, and you can all watch along to the splendid Nick Frost playing me on Last Christmas. Here's Stephen. Well, there we are. That was nice, wasn't it? So that was Father Christmas. How nice to see him. Yeah, I'm going to talk today about Last Christmas. Now, Last Christmas is the 12th Doctor's first Christmas special. It was originally intended as Clara's last episode, and it's an intriguing exploration of how we perceive the difference between the real world and the world of dreams, and indeed it asks whether there is any such thing as reality at all. Well, for my money, it really is the best of all the Doctor Who Christmas episodes. But it's not just that. It boasts outstanding performances from Peter Capaldi, who I'm not going to pick today, Toby, so I'm not going down that route on this episode. And Peter Capaldi in this at last finds the 12th Doctor within him. There's a splendid performance too from Jenna Coleman, who's finally freed of all the Impossible Girl and Danny Pink complications which had so weighed the character down. Nick Frost, who rivals in Edmund Gwen and Richard Attenborough as the best Santas ever, those 2 in the 2 versions of Miracle on 34th Street, and from the entire ensemble cast, each of whom brings an ironic truth to their dream world roles. Now, Series 8 of Doctor Who had enjoyed some very high points and some relatively low ones, but it had for the most part been an enjoyable ride. Nonetheless, brilliant though Peter Capaldi had been, the feeling persisted that he and Stephen Moffat hadn't yet quite got the 12th Doctor right. He was still far too grumpy and at times almost unlikable. Last Christmas was for me the point where things came together for Capaldi, with the change in his character coming on screen as a natural development rather than out of the blue between series. It was a development that had been foreshadowed in Series 9, for Series 8, I beg your pardon, most particularly in that moment in Dark Water when the Doctor responds to Clara's betrayal of him with utter forgiveness. It's a beautiful and defining moment for Capaldi's Doctor. However, the series ended in more lies and deception, albeit for noble reasons, as both the Doctor and Clara provide the other with a reason to leave them. Now in Last Christmas at Last, we see them reunite, resolve their remaining differences, and decide to continue travelling in the spirit of friendship. Now, as per the rules of the game, I'm going to choose 5 things about Last Christmas that I really enjoyed. And Toby, I've got a feeling you might be able to guess these for the most part, because I think they're quite obvious ones.
Aha, Steve Hatcher there on video, which is exciting because with my new setup, so this justifies the wait, as he said there. We spoke about this in October 2022. I have just actually done another event at the Quad in Derby with Steve, who organises brilliant events. This was a Quatermass event, not just Nigel Neal, but actually the Quatermass movies and the first 2 episodes of the Quatermass Experiment. Myself, John Deere, Andy Murray and Bronte Schultz did some talking as well and had a lovely time and were looked after brilliantly by Steve. If you're passing through Derby, the Quad is a wonderful venue and Steve puts on great events there. And his Hoover stuff, of course, is fantastic. But I've kept him waiting. Well, because he has now appeared in more Happy Times and Places than anybody else. I remember him really enthusing me about the Sea Devils, which there was only one of those. Now we've had a cut-down version since as well, which was a story I'd always thought was fine. But actually, I really enjoyed watching it along with him. And I needed an increase in new series episodes because I felt like I was burning through Classic Who because it's more comfortable ground for me. So I said, oh, go on, do them all. And actually, I've already done, because he didn't give me an order in which to do them. I've already done his Empress of Mars. And now this one. So there's one more of his to do. I won't tell you what it is. But I have waited because I was also slightly guilty that he, like many people, provided me with a video, and I'd stopped doing the video versions of these because they had become a bit of a palaver. But I've got a new setup now, and I'm experimenting with doing a video, and so you will see him dressed as Father Christmas, so worth the wait. And it's great to have him on board, and it's great to have a Christmassy visual to go with this Christmassy story. So if you're listening to this and you'd prefer to watch it, do go over to my YouTube channel, which I think will have a visual version of this that you can have an awful lot of fun with if you like looking at the people who are talking to you. So, season's greetings. This is coming out. I mean, I don't know if you're listening to this on Christmas Day. I do like the idea of broadcasting to people on Christmas Day. I think it's very special. It's a privilege to be allowed into people's homes, and I sometimes get to do it for Radio 4 Extra because I always get the Christmas period of the Seventh Dimension, which is a semi-regular stint I have on the Seventh Dimension, introducing their archive sci-fi. But this year, as I record this in 2025, there's not long to go till Christmas. As I record this, I mean, I'm pretty much almost going live, and I've got loads of cooking to do tomorrow, and I'm really behind, but I want to get this out on Christmas Day. So, I mean, it's suitably. This isn't like, I'm not recording this in the height of summer. This isn't like a TV Christmas special where I've got a snow machine outside and I'm sweltering into the heat. This is pretty damn close. I'm recording this on Christmas Eve. There we go. I was trying to beat around the bush there. I'm recording this pretty much less than 24 hours before you're going to hear it. So hello and happy Christmas. So I'm feeling suitably festive, but also a bit harassed because we've got people coming. I was going to say tomorrow, today. It's the early hours, and I've got to cook lots of lovely finger food, which is fiddly and takes a bit of time. And I've also got to prep Christmas dinner so that the whole of Christmas Day isn't spent prepping Christmas dinner. So I've got lots to do, but I do like broadcasting to people on Christmas Day, and I do like the idea of being let into people's homes because it's rather special. And I know that some people, and if some people choose to have this in their ears to make their day more enjoyable, well, gosh, how flattering. Thank you very much. And if some people want to listen because, I don't know, maybe you're on your own through choice or not, or maybe you're working, or maybe you're driving somewhere, driving home for Christmas. We've just lost Chris Rea, bless him, at at a Christmas time, a bit like with Kirsty MacColl, who we also lost at around Christmas time as well. And George Michael, actually, he died just after Christmas. Don't record a Christmas song, folks. But anyway, that's rather bittersweet. But I find Christmas a little bittersweet, and not in a bad way. I'm not going to be remotely maudlin, but I do get a little emotional, because I suppose it's a way station, isn't it, in our lives? It's a marker. You remember those who aren't with you this Christmas, or the last Christmas you spent with people. Oh, last Christmas. There we go. I didn't know I was going here. And it's also, we put things behind us, we take stock of our lives, and we move forward. And both of those are quite emotional things. And the older you get, moving forward brings with it some melancholy, because you're eating away at the precious time you have left. I didn't think I was going here. So anyway, what I'm saying is, I find Christmas a happily emotional time, but what is it? Sad is happy for deep people. You know, there is a melancholy and a bittersweetness, and I think that goes with the snow and the frost and the crunch and all of those things that go with it. So that's odd, because there is something melancholy about winter, you know, closing in, and as I say, the snow and the bite in the air that I associate with all of those feelings. I've just enunciated. Yet, if I lived in Australia, I wouldn't be feeling that, because it's really hot there. So, do they? Tim Minchin does a great song, doesn't he, called "Drinking White Wine at Christmas." I suppose we all have our own particular bespoke associations, but I feel quite lucky that I live in a part of the world where Christmas brings with it all sorts of other accoutrements that add to that bittersweet feeling. Or maybe it's just that I associate those with the feeling, and so they seem appropriate. It's all about perception, which is what this episode is all about. I've just watched it. I haven't watched this episode, I think, for a very long time. I'm not sure I've watched it after the period where it was first on. I won't have watched it once then. I'll have watched it a few times. I tend to do that with new episodes of Doctor Who, or I did back then anyway. But I don't often feel like watching Christmas episodes outside of Christmas, and usually at Christmas I'm too busy, and also there's a new Doctor Who Christmas special. So I haven't seen this for a long time, I don't think. And I watched it. I've literally just put it out, essentially. And I loved it. I thought it was great. So hopefully we'll have a good time with this. But before we do, we are going to hear from the denizens of Patreonville, who I've given advance warning that I will be doing this, which is another reason I'm doing this now, because it's like I've made a rod for my own back. But also they haven't had many special releases this month, because I've been spending all my time doing an advent calendar. So they've had a few omnibuses and a bit of an AMA, but not as much as I would like to have given them. So hello, denizens of Patreonville, this is for you, and everybody else will be getting this on Christmas Day as well. But these guys will be getting it a little bit earlier, and they also get a little bit earlier on the day. I mean, they still have to have it on the day. So they've only bought themselves a matter of hours this time. But often patrons get stuff months in advance. But I don't want to do the Christmas special in July for any of you. But one of the bonuses that they get is to contribute. They get the heads up of what I'm doing, and so they get to give their opinions. So the people who've gone to patreon.com/Toby Hadoke and have contributed from as little as £3 a month get to give their opinion. The first of them to do so this time around was Kit Allen, who says, "I thought this was pretty good at the time of airing, but after a few festive rewatches, it's since become one of my favourites. I think it's the best of the Capaldi Christmas specials. A glorious mashup of sci-fi tropes and tinsel, and Nick Frost puts in a joyous guest turn as Santa. Even though it was on the cards, I also don't mind that Clara doesn't leave at the end of this, as I believe was originally planned. Her being restored to youth and merrily scampering off to the TARDIS with a reinvigorated Doctor is exactly what the spirit of the show is about for me, and a last-minute miracle feels just right for Christmas." Yes, I think that's quite right, kid. Ben Cowdell says, "As my claret-tinted spectacles see from other YouTube reactions of this episode and this era, it's a good one. Lump in throat every time Moffat throws 'Every Christmas is Last Christmas,' as that Christmas was the last one for a university friend of mine. were so blessed to have Capaldi and Coleman. I'm sorry about your friend, Ben, and you've touched upon there what I was alluding to before. I think we do clock loss more profoundly, I think, at Christmas. It's a useful marker buoy in our lives, I think, and I think that's profound, and it touches what it means to be human, whether, however much we buy into the ceremony or the particulars of the religion or whatever, whether we're religious or not. I'm not religious, but I respect people that are, and I think I used to think religion was a load of old Tommy rot, but now I do think we have it for a reason. It's a useful construct, and I used to think it was so sort of clever for people to go, religion's a load of old rubbish. Actually, I'm now more sympathetic with people that, I suppose, decentralize themselves in order to look to something that is higher, that is detached, that is more important, and I think and allows for a sense of wonder and the miraculous. And even though I rationally can't bring myself to believe it, I like to exist in a world where those things are possible, and I certainly don't scoff at them anyway. Well, I suppose the rational part of me sort of scoffs in a way, but doesn't want to. Oh, cognitive dissonance. Where art thou? Right here. Anyway, Steve Hatcher, our contributor, our guest, says, "Hi, Toby. A hint for when you record. You'll hear me say at the beginning that I'll only pick Peter Capaldi once over the 3 12th Doctor stories I did. Well, you found that when you did my one on Empress of Mars, so I won't be picking him for this one, Steve." Thank you, Steve, for the tip off there. Your Santa did actually mention that, but as Santa recorded that 3 years ago, you may have forgotten, but thanks for the double check. I appreciate that. Adam Parkin says, "I really enjoyed this one when it went out, after not having enjoyed Series 8. The line about Alien being racist is hilarious, and I love the idea and look of the dream crabs. Nick Frost is also perfect. I do wish they'd kept this as Clara's last story, rather than killing her and unkilling her in Series 9. Yes, the killing and unkilling is an aspect of modern Who that I think has diminishing returns. Paul Kirkley. Oh, hello, Paul. "I think this might be my favourite Doctor Who Christmas special. A scary, funny mix of Alien, The Thing, Inception and Miracle on 34th Street. It's dark and creepy, but also hilarious in the way all the best Stephen Moffat stories, and indeed all the best Christmas stories, are. This is also effectively the debut of the 12th Doctor we know and love. Having admitted he probably went a bit hard down the Malcolm Tucker in Space route during Series 8, here's where Stephen resets him as the lovable space wizard that Doctor Who fans now seem to agree is one of the all-time great interpretations of the role, even if not everyone entirely appreciated it at the time." Very interesting. Now, you're not the first person to say that there, Paul. That is an interesting observation. I'm not as across the Capaldi era as I should be, really. This has sort of got me in the mood to rewatch it all. Oh dear, I've got enough to do. Lee Wood says it's a deft mix of creepy, funny and clever. A highlight for me is Faye Marseille's Shona. It's a perfect Who performance with a pitch-perfect balancing act of taking it seriously and having fun with it. She's one of those should-have-been-a companion characters. Bloody hell, Capaldi was great as the Doctor, wasn't he? He was, Lee, but I can't choose him because I've had a tip-off that Steve won't be. Jason Thompson says, "I'm not so..." Ooh, Jason Thompson. Jason Thompson, who has a good record with Christmas specials. Well, good record for me, not so good for him, because he did A Christmas Carol for this very podcast, and it was one of the ones where I got all 5. And Steve has said he's choosing easy ones. So no pressure, which means I won't get any. Don't set me up to fail. As soon as you tell me something's easy, I completely screw things up. I'm quite good at doing surprisingly well when I'm not supposed to, and then when it gets to the bit that should be really easy, I fall at the last hurdle. Because I second guess myself, and anyway, let's not get into that. But Jason Thompson says, "I'm not so taken with this one, but that's mainly because I've never been a fan of it's a dream so anything can happen narratives, especially when used, as it is here, to bring back a definitely dead character and have them talk about their own death. The 'we've woken up, so this is reality, oh no, we haven't, and it isn't' plot twist The, oh, look, maybe it's still a dream, lingering shot on a significant bit of imagery ending. The ending also took me out of the narrative. It seemed obvious on viewing that this was supposed to be Clara's farewell, and frankly, it would have been a better one than we eventually got, but got changed at the last minute. All that being said, I absolutely love the sleigh ride when they all just lean into the dream and the Doctor, who has been a grumpy bastard up until now, and the Doctor, who has been a grumpy bastard up until now, actually enjoys himself. As others have said, this seems to be a reset point to lighten him up a bit after the moody, dark, angsty Doctor of Series 8. Brandon Moore says, at the time of first viewing, I was not sure what to make of this episode. As with much of Capaldi's first year, there were a number of decisions made that I felt unsure about. However, looking in the rear-view mirror, these questionable choices matter a lot less to me. Besides, this episode seems to really start the mellowing of Capaldi's harsher Doctor. The darker, horror-esque elements of the story are very easily transplanted into the Christmas special format. The use of Santa Claus, actually, look, let's just get this out of the way. It's Father Christmas, okay? Not Santa. My mother was very insistent about this when I was young and would not have stood for such blatant Americanism in a British programme. To emphasise the ridiculousness of their situation works really well, especially as Nick Frost judges his performance excellently. The dream crabs are proper creepy, even if they look a close relative to the time beetle in terms of their obvious fakeness. Oh, the time beetle in Turn Left. Shona is a great companion who wasn't. Well, not the first person to say that, Brandon. She's the Will Chandler of Christmas. A lot of people say this should really have been Clara's last story, and I do agree it would have been a good ending. But the old age Clara doesn't work for me. It's very hard to get old age makeup right. And despite the game effort, Coleman doesn't quite convince for me. Capaldi plays the scene superbly, though. Christmas specials can be Marmite episodes, but I love them, and this is definitely Capaldi's strongest for me. There's a theme emerging here. Tom Selinsky, the mighty Tom Selinsky, says, I liked this much more than The Doctor, the Widow in the Wardrobe, or The Snowmen. I recall liking The Snowmen, but again, I haven't seen that probably since around the time. The opening with Nick Frost's genial Santa Claus is charming and funny, with great supporting work from Dan Starkey and Nathan McMullen, but entirely baffling and confounding. The sudden post-titles cut to the Arctic base doesn't clear up very much, but quickly it becomes obvious what kind of game is being played here, because then the words Dream State are uttered in a Stephen Moffat script. It surely can't be very long before some serious narrative rug-pulling begins. All that's missing, and I wonder if it was ever considered, is a back-to-reality style episode in which Clara is made to believe that her entire adventure with the Doctor was all an absurd dream. All four members of the Arctic base, nameless, are sketched in briefly but are well differentiated in the way that, say, the inhabitants of the acid mine in the Rebel Flesh weren't, with only Michael Troughton not quite registering, and the whole thing clips along very merrily indeed with Shona's attempts to undermine Santa's reality. I got a second sled, a particular highlight. Moffat also proves himself again to be a master of the show's meta-narrative, with the elderly Clara a perfectly plausible exit for the character, even if neither the makeup department nor the actor could quite pull off the transformation. A brave try, though. Thank you, Tom. David Gillespie Pratt, who's been doing some good work on YouTube as usual, says, I struggled with Series 8, I can't lie. And then Santa turned up. A moment of madness. So I didn't have high expectations. I was quite pleasantly surprised. It's a bit cliched and obvious in places, but it was nice to have something a bit different from the Christmas special. A nice atmospheric piece channeling Alien, The Thing, and maybe Santa Claus Conquers the Martians. Okay, maybe not. I will agree with others here that this would have made a good jumping-off point for Clara. It feels like a good full stop for her story before same old kicks in. Clara divides people. Well, it's funny. Clara has a checkered history with the show, and it does go to show how you can have too much of a good thing in a way. Because I remember people getting very cross when she turned up at Capaldi's regeneration, even though Jenna Coleman is absolutely brilliant. It's I suppose it's when you get the feeling that the program makers like an actor or a performance or a character so much that they keep them in even when perhaps they shouldn't, and you know, what is it they say, kill your babies, isn't it? I mean, under slightly different circumstances, that's about editing scripts, but it does really apply to TV as well. And the X-Files was always thwarted by bringing back characters it had made a great impact killing off, only to bring them back because they like the actors or whatever. And programs do that a lot. because it's hard to sort of say, well, actually, let's just say to that actor, we are never seeing you again. So maybe something to be said for cancellation. Maybe we should cancel all the actors who play characters we like who shouldn't return. Ha ha ha. Paul Carnahan says, a nicely twisty tale that balances Christmas fun. Nick Frost is a hoot as Santa, with Moffat's puzzle box storytelling. Definitely one of the best Christmas specials. I might even prefer it to the more fated A Christmas Carol. Well, I used to be hard on The Christmas Carol, and as Jason Thompson discovered to his cost, I absolutely adored it when I did it for this and watched it again. I think it's lovely. Joe Llewellyn, news from across the pond. What do the Americans? Well, poor old Joe. Joe, you are now all the Americans. Joe says, hi, Toby. I was ambivalent about most of Series 8. I did not much care for this angrier, cynical Doctor. The Series 9 adjustments fixed that. I really enjoyed Robot of Sherwood because the guest character punctured some of that grumpiness. Enter Nick Frost and his elves. Last Christmas was very funny. Great lines. No wonder everyone keeps invading you. This was a good sign for the upcoming series. Yep, thanks, Joe. Good point. Stephen Shapansky says, so now we've gone from America, now we blame Canada for this opinion. Stephen Shapansky says, quite probably my favourite Doctor Who Christmas story. I love how the Doctor, who is properly and delightfully grumpy at times in this... I suddenly awoke from my own dream and went, am I actually recording this? Because I'm got a long time in and haven't even started watching the episode yet. And I thought, well, that's fine. And then I thought, it won't be fine if I haven't recorded it. I have. So apologies for that slight hiatus that I'm not going to edit out because I'll have forgotten it by the end of what ends up being a very long podcast, probably, because I should be going to bed. Anyway, I'll get to bed quicker if I don't do this sort of thing. Stephen Shapansky, I love how the Doctor, who is properly and delightfully grumpy at times in this, finds unrepressed joy in flying a sleigh. It was rumoured that Jenna Coleman would be leaving at the end of this, so to see Clara wake up and run off with the Doctor again was unexpectedly emotional. It took a year for Capaldi's Doctor to find joy, and it's a journey that feels earned. Yeah, and how they sort of turn a misjudgment, which I think everybody sort of feels that, into a positive part of the narrative. That's the way to deal with them. It's not retconning so much, but it's making good use of what's there. Even if what's there is something that you feel was got wrong. Steve Walker says, hi Steve. At the time, there seemed to be a lot of hate towards Clara, or Jenna, I'm not sure, and ambivalence towards Peter Capaldi's Doctor, but I always loved both of them from the get-go. So it was a very nice surprise to discover that Jenna wasn't leaving after all. If she had, we'd have had a very different 2015 season, I think, and even though she cheated death at the end, her death in Face the Raven was very emotional. I thought Last Christmas had some great twists and turns, a pastiche, taking the piss out of, for both Santa and the Alien franchise, and having a great mix of drama, action, humour and guest cast, adding to the number of stars who've now done both Who and Star Wars, enabling me to infuriate my wife even more by mentioning that fact every time they pop up in anything. Ha ha! It was also fabulous to see the great Dan Starkey out of makeup, excluding the elf ears before anyone jumps in with, I think you'll find... well anticipated, Steve. And what a great idea for an alien, changing your perceptions so that it can feed on you, take you over. Loved it. Another ripper from Mr. Moffat. Jonathan Evans says, I find that I appreciate a lot of post-revival Doctor Who. I can't go on calling it New Who after 20 years. I still do, Jonathan. More after the first viewing. This is never more the case than with Christmas episodes that are big and bold and aimed at an even broader audience than usual. My comfort zone is something like Androzani, but good luck getting that on BBC One on Christmas Day at 5 p.m, unless it's amusing Androzani Foresters, i.e. those from the Doctor that were doing the wardrobe. But beneath the froth, these Christmas episodes contain an element of profundity that can be startling. Perhaps the ultimate example of this is Time of the Doctor. I was initially nonplussed, but now recognise it as an almost unbearably moving summation of what Doctor Who is. Last Christmas is similar. It's silly, surreal, scary, existentially terrifying the more you think about it, and ultimately redemptive. What more could you ask for on Christmas Day? Yeah, I mean, I was thinking that when I saw it. The problem with reading out these things in advance is that they're saying a lot of the things that I would have said, and I would have felt quite clever for saying, but now it just seems like I'll be repeating the people that have written in. Fraser Gregory says, Doctor Who does Inception, or more accurately, Red Dwarfs better than life, with a dash of sirens. As such, it has more endings than the Lord of the Rings Special Edition. But what a love coda we get to the story! What a lovely coda we get to the story of Danny Pink. This would have been the perfect exit for Clara. Nick Frost is all the excellent you'd expect as Santa, and it's always a joy to see Capaldi having fun in the role. And Chris Williams says, I've probably missed making a comment on this one. Oh, you didn't anticipate how close to the wire I'd go, Chris. But I've actually found it difficult to articulate how much I bloomin' love it. It's not only my favourite Christmas special, it's one of my favourite episodes. While others may just happen to take place at Christmas, with the season not really playing a part, this couldn't be more tapped into all things Christmas. From Shona dancing to Slade to the mysterious tangerine, it was such an uplift from the misery of the previous season's ending. The story is charming, emotional, terrifying, smart, and also very funny. Lines like Second Sledge just land so perfectly. Nick Frost's Santa is such a good depiction, flipping from lovable to maybe sinister, while the verbal sparring between him and the Doctor is a highlight. The scene where Santa believes the Doctor is also an imaginary construct and the Doctor then struggles to assert that, no, he is real, is quite a smart turn. I imagine a few people thought, Santa Claus in Doctor Who, that's ridiculous. He's just a make-believe character. How can that possibly work? Yeah, right. So what is the face-changing time traveller then? That's exactly the conversation they're having here. I'm going to stop. I could go on and on about this episode. Hey, he already has readers. You wait, Chris, I'm about to go on about it for an hour. I've gone on about it for half an hour, but using you guys. And I haven't even started to go on about it when it's on. I just watched this at 6 a.m. on my phone on a train from Haywards Heath. It's a long story. And it still pushed all those teary emotional buttons that only seem active at Christmas. Yeah, you and I both, Chris. There should be a word for that feeling. Every Christmas is last Christmas. Seems a more and more powerful sentiment as time goes on, but it's a reason to celebrate rather than a maudlin statement. So Merry Christmas to all the happy timers, and thanks for bringing us together in a positive way, Toby. P.S. I like tangerines. I like the tangerines. I'm glad you got in there, Chris. I thought that was a beautiful summation and very kind words, and I like the idea of you watching a Doctor Who Christmas episode on your phone on the train to Haywards Heath and crying and nobody knowing why. Ha ha! Well, I am now going to watch the episode and chat along to it, and we'll see what we think, won't we? As we, I'll try not to echo what the people have just said. I did think of some of along similar lines when I was watching it. What's only an hour or so ago, and now I'm going to watch it all over again. But I don't mind because I did enjoy it. Let's hope that the things I thought when I was watching it come out of my mouth when I'm watching it this time, and not just watching it for fun, but for sharing. Oh, sharing's fun, isn't it? It's I was receiving it before, and now I'm giving. And that's what Christmas is all about, isn't it? So let's go and watch the last one. I mean, it wasn't the last one, but it is the last one. It's called Last Christmas, and it's going to begin on iPlayer for me in 3, 2, 1. It's a very good title, isn't it? So I watched this. Something's just fallen over. This is happening live. I hope I haven't just been attacked. No, something just fell off my back shelf. I hate it when people do this in podcasts. I'm not going to do it. But here we are. I do feel we're about to approach, actually, Doctor Who without a Christmas special. And I've heard Russell say there's a whacking great gap. Russell T say there's a whacking great gap where Christmas should be, and Doctor Who feels so Christmassy. I mean, I think it's because because Doctor Who itself is a bit like Christmas. It's something that makes us feel comfortable and is slightly strange and daft and silly and comforting and scary and all these things. And Doctor Who Christmas specials, I think, they embrace Christmas often, and how much more Christmassy can you get than a bit of snow, And I know how expensive snow machines are, because my partner Shirley has often done at Coronation Street Christmas episodes where they bring a snow machine in whenever they film it, sort of October time. Of course you have to fake the snow, but I do love a snowy Christmas special. It is lovely to see Dan Starkey out of his makeup. Dan Starkey, the Sontaran Strax, who I've got to know rather well on the sort of convention circuit, and we've acted together actually in Big Finish and on Quatermass on the live stage at Alexandra Palace. But we have Nick Frost, and Dan is a great big fan of Doctor Who as well. But Nick Frost, of course, appeared at the end of the previous episode, and I'd had a few messages from people saying, "Oh God, Toby, when Nick Frost appeared as Santa, I thought at first that was you, because maybe we don't look unlike each other, especially when he's got a white beard and a hat on, and so he's just got a sort of slightly round face, really, which I also have." If you look hard though, you can see his teeth are quite distinctive, I think. But it was very flattering that people thought that I would be the surprise at the end of an episode of Doctor Who. And I'd love to entertain that with any sense of, oh, well, it might have been. It wouldn't have been for a second. It's very sweet that anybody thinks that that's the case. I remember once somebody I greatly admire, a very successful comedy writer, said, "Oh, I've come up with an idea for a Radio 4 series, and I'm going to. Do you mind if I pitch you as the host, because that might help to get it through?" And I was like, "I think you have a much more impressive view of what I bring to the table than anybody that works at the BBC." And indeed, when they did make this thing, they made it with Richard Herring, who I think he himself now, he's quite Santa-y. Richard Herring would probably struggle to get on a BBC pilot. No disrespect to Richard, it's just an illustration of what the BBC are after at the moment. But even then, they certainly weren't after me. Nobody's ever been after me. But it is a bit like when Community didn't that American series had Matt Lucas playing a tedious fan called Toby, and people were like, "Oh, was that a reference to you?" And part of me is going, well, I couldn't possibly say. No, it wasn't. Nobody knows who I am. I mean, in that case, it's probably a lucky escape, because I think he was a bit of an arse. And they might have got the name when surfing for the names of fans or something. But yes, the idea. It is a good indication that sometimes see your life as much more impressive than it actually is, because the idea that anyone working on Doctor Who would see the unveiling of me at the end of an episode as a pleasant surprise for the viewers thinks I'm much more successful than I actually am. So God bless you. But then that brings a strange bittersweet melancholy for me, because it's lovely that people might think that, but also the truth of that brings me crashing down to earth and goes, but it's not remotely close to reality. And that is kind of this episode in a nutshell, isn't it? It's about the sad reality beneath the fantasy and the imagination. And I love the tangerines. We had a tangerine. I'm getting that fake snow up my nose. Oh God, is the Doctor Who world coming into I love this Doctor theme, by the way. I do like the invocation of the tangerine, because I always got a tangerine, a walnut, a whole walnut. We did have nutcrackers. In my day, you had nutcrackers in the house, and a lot of Christmas was spent cracking actual nuts, which I'm not sure the world is a better place now. We can just get nuts. There was something hard-earned about cracking the shell. We'd have these things of mixed nuts. There were hazelnuts and walnuts and Brazil nuts. But to crack a Brazil nut and not get the shell is very, very difficult. Walnuts, not so bad, but to do it and not break them. There's something about a treat that's hard-won, that comes with danger and comes with bits that you don't like. That again, and I think this Christmas special sort of plays along these lines of nothing is handed to you on a plate. Reality does come with shards that crack your teeth and cut the top of your mouth in order to get the sweet meat inside. And that's life. And maybe it's me getting old now, but I do, Nick Frost gets a credit at the top. I'd forgotten about that. because a lot of people, Gambon didn't. Do you know what I mean? I'm all for it because Doctor Who in the Radio Times, particularly during the Troughton era, certainly during the Troughton era and some of the Hartnell era, it would list guest actors before the companions, and I'm all for that. I always think the companion should always be secondary, not joint, which will bring me to the caption at the end of this, which goes against that. But anyway, here we have this wonderful crew of actors who I'm sure I concede throughout this commentary, I think, because I suppose the first thing to acknowledge about this is that it feels like, alien base under siege stuff that is quite familiar in Doctor Who and quite not perhaps what you would expect for a Christmas special, because Christmas specials are supposed to feel a little differently, a little chocolate boxy or whatever. So there's weirdly an incongruity about this familiar Doctor Who setting, because although it's familiar for Doctor Who, it doesn't quite feel correct for a Christmas special. We have a slightly dirty old man moment here, which is curious. They raise their heads quite a lot in the Moffat era, and I wonder what that is. I wonder what that is speaking to. I also wonder if it's appropriate for a program watched by kids. And it does speak to our times again, where, it does speak to our times a little bit, where, or maybe I'm just feeling it because I'm 52 and we all feel, I feel targeted by entropy and aging and irrelevance, but I sort of feel like I don't also need the addition to suggest that every time we're nice to a young woman, we've got hair sprouting out of places we shouldn't and we're disgusting. But maybe that's because I am that. And of course, Stephen Moffat is a bit older than me, so he was probably around my age when he was writing this. But he can be quite self-lacerating. You've got to have Slade. You've got to have Slade in a Doctor Who Christmas special. I remember first hearing it in the Christmas Invasion, and it felt like Doctor Who had suddenly become modern, even though it's a really old song. But it felt like Doctor Who was with us and relevant. And Faye Marsay is brilliant, isn't she? And this is brilliant Doctor Who, and she does this. She's because you have to be quite unself-conscious to do this well, and I think she's doing it brilliantly. But Doctor Who works when it really, at its most daring, when it flirts with the absolutely ridiculous, but sort of makes it winning and fun, but also scary, and does what you can't do anywhere else. So this sequence to me is perfectly Doctor Who, even though there hasn't really been anything like it in Doctor Who. And yeah, that's the beauty of this show, isn't it? You could a writer can suddenly come up with an idea where you go, that's absolutely Doctor Who, even though it's not like anything else in Doctor Who. And Faye Marsay's great. But this is quite Moffat-y, isn't it? It's. I was quite intrigued to see how many things are recurring motifs. Not a criticism. Dennis Potter does a lot of the same things, and a lot of good writers have things that they return to or do variations of. But these remind me a bit of the gas mask kids rising from the hospital bed. And it's because hospital beds are a bit creepy. They sound a bit like The Silence as well, these guys. But actually the fact that they're a sort of melange of all sorts of different influences that are almost in the subconscious of Doctor Who fans does fit in with the storyline. That everything in here, like a dream, is a mixture of sort of familiar things in an unfamiliar setting, even if you don't recognise them. And it's only when you wake up that you go, yeah, why didn't I recognise that in the dream when it's obvious to me in reality? But then, of course, you don't necessarily remember the dream correctly. But, so these have got the slight noise of The Silence there. I I like the Doctor. Did he say we've been hacked as well? I think Stephen Moffat is very, very good at that, of using a thing that we understand that's very much part of the modern world, particularly the modern scientific world, and using it to make sense of his abstract ideas. He's brilliant at that, I think. Oh, and Danny Pink is dead. Of course, because we have this brilliant thing that the Doctor and Clara, when we last saw them, had both lied to each other for the other one's good, which was a great ending. Although I share, there are things to talk about with that last two-parter from the previous season, but I don't think we've got time to do that now. But I certainly. There were all sorts of things in that past season that contributed, that the Patreon correspondents have alluded to, that I think are very important in terms of our understanding of this episode. In that it hadn't been. The start of the Capaldi era had come with sort of compromises. This is brilliant. Again, this is very, very Doctor Who-y. It's very, very Christmassy. And I think the use of Santa. Oh, I want that white thing. I've got one. There's one actually above. It's sitting on the roof of the booth that I am in. They've got a name. I got one for my son, and he's never really played with it. And now he's a grown man, but I'm not chucking it away. So it's now an ornament. A white remote-controlled robot thing that is now an ornament. Ha! That's Tempest fugiting, isn't it? So the North Pole brings with it snow. Santa gets a hero entry, but heralded by those stair slinky things, which again, there's the thing, there's that robot thing. They have a name I can't remember. But yes, the stair slinky things, which remind me of the simplicity of toys that we coveted in Christmas past. So here's Dan Starkey, who is fantastic, and Nathan McMullen as well. I think they both do a lovely job. It's a nice reward for Dan, who's laboured under Strax's prosthetic for such a while, to be given a chance to do a Roy Skelton in The Green Death, to do a Michael Wisher in Planet of Evil and others, to emerge from behind the mask so that we see them. But the Santa Claus idea, I think, is a brilliant one, because it's daring you to say, this is ridiculous. And I think Doctor Who does that so well. And I don't mean that Doctor Who should always be raising its eyebrow and taking the piss out of itself. Not at all. She's so good. But the use of Santa, because Santa in this can't be real, because that would be too stupid for Doctor Who, as they say later. What, the programme about the man who travels through space and time in a police box? But it knows what it's doing with that. It's luring you in and going, that this series will not countenance Santa Claus being real. Although I know we get that lovely little hint at the end, which also seems kind of. But it would feel like Doctor Who jumped the shark if Santa was real, and it's playing with that idea of perception. And this is a program. This is an episode about. And I like the fact the elves get a verbal warning. That's good comedy. That's just good comedy. Putting everyday workplace parlance into the worlds of elfdom. But the idea that this is full of good jokes, and I'll talk over so many of them, and I can only apologise for that. But I would like to say, for the record, there is one-liner after one-liner in this, and Stephen Moffat's gift for comedy should never be underestimated. But this idea of Santa being real or not being real plays into what this story is about, is dreams, reality. We know when we're watching Doctor Who it's not real, but we have to believe it's happening in order for us not to be uninvested in the drama. We have to accept the ridiculous things, and the program has to tread very carefully in allowing us to accept the ridiculous things, so that we can feel scared for the characters, we can feel sad for the characters, we can we can feel invested in how the plot works. But really daring and interesting, and Moffat I think Stephen Moffat is a very daring Doctor Who writer. He doesn't necessarily always get it right, but I'm a comedian, and we try jokes, and the jokes that really work are the ones that push the envelope, and they're also the ones that really don't work, and you have to flirt with that, and sometimes you can end up with egg on your face, but you end up with nothing on your face. And maybe you don't want things on your face. Stop putting things on my face. But no, for the purposes of this metaphor, I need stuff all over my face. Oh God! I've just been to one of the parties for the post-credits people. Let's not get into that. That's an in-joke. Yeah. In order, for the daring joke that pushes the envelope to work, you have to teeter on the edge, and sometimes you fall off, sometimes it doesn't work, and it's sort of the same with Doctor Who plotting and ideas, in a sense. And I think Stephen Moffat really just tried to do this because he has a sort of gleeful. He's a needler in a way. His sense of humour is quite needly and quite pushy sometimes. To sort of say this, I'm daring you to lose faith in this, because then when you don't, the payoff, I think, and the word profundity was used well by one of the correspondents. I think this does touch upon the profound and the moving, and Doctor Who's brilliance is that it allows you to have Santa Claus in basically Alien. Which then allows us to have these conversations with these two people who are talking about completely fantastical things. Their whole situation that they're now trying to repair was based on a fantastical series of events, but the emotion behind it, which comes from good writing but also superb acting, and these two are brilliant, is absolutely real, and you cry at it, but you can only do that if you are invested in all of what this is about, and I truly am. Now, I'd be interested to know what family viewers at Christmas, how they take the sort of sentimental stuff, and it's funny when I watch sentimental stuff that I don't buy. It seems cloying and unnecessary. You go, oh, why do they have to put these bits in? And maybe that's when it's in stuff that I haven't bought into, because when it's in stuff I have bought into, like this, it absolutely, tickles the back of the throat and flicks those tear ducts and provokes that lacrimosity. That's that bigger on the inside. That banter between the Doctor and Santa is very good. The very spiky Capaldi is brilliant, and I really like this version of him. I do think the ultra unkind version of him was perhaps slightly misjudged. I'd noticed this long story thing, and I think that's a clever piece of plotting. That's one of those things that every viewer will go, oh yeah, I noticed that, without it being too stupid and obvious. I like this video that they're watching because it reminds me absolutely of The Thing, which is one of my favourite films. Do listen to my Smirsh pod with John Rain where I talk about The Thing. I love The Thing. It's a film I revisit every year, I should think. And The Thing and Alien, these are deliberate evocations, and we have the reference to Alien a bit to show that he's not cheating here. He's not. The homage is deliberate because it's about dreams being full of familiar things. So he's having his cake and eating it, which is brilliant, and he's very good at doing that, and he's very good at taking the everyday. He's the best person, I think, at taking the everyday, or taking things that chime with us and that we recognise, and making them terrifying. He's mentioned the film Alien. Now, is it odd because I would never describe Alien as a horror movie, but that's I allow that because it makes it makes for a brilliant joke. And of course, and we have this with this Capaldi Doctor, which again makes sense of the character, even though we've never quite seen the character in previous incarnations do what he does. Like when it doesn't work for me when he calls Danny Pink PE and does that, but when he doesn't recognise the humans, or he goes, "You, the sexy one, you," and of course he chooses the older woman, although Maureen Beattie's a very handsome woman, and but that he chooses the older woman could call the sexy one. I'm not quite sure how I feel about the Doctor thinking anyone's sexy, but it kind of works because he's doing it he's doing it in this slightly distanced way that he does it, instead of, other Doctors would have called the person by their name. But this Doctor has too much going on in his head. And I think, again, Moffat is very good at doing that with the Doctor, is that the Doctor's internal monologue is whirring at 100 miles an hour, and his external one is kind of trying to cut through the chaff in order to get to the important bits that his brain's already working on, and he doesn't have time for human niceties. That, to me, is better than him just being a git, and that, I think, makes sense of this decision to make him remote and alien, and because that's funny and that's sort of winning, and it's strangely charming because it is actually also a sort of vulnerability, because it means he can't quite have friendships with people in the way that the rest of us can, which makes him a little bit lonely and a little bit detached. So it's funny, it's also spiky, but it's also quite sad, and I love something that's sort of complicated as that also makes for interesting dynamics when it comes to communication. So that, for me, is a much better use of this kind of Doctor than is perhaps had originally happened when the character was working itself out on screen. And of course this was clever, because when Santa comes in, you think, oh, is Santa going to be in her dreams? And oh no, it's Danny Pink, who I hadn't expected to be in this. I think Danny Pink gets a rather raw deal. I know a lot of people who don't like Danny Pink. I think Samuel Anderson is very charismatic, very decent. I think the programme is quite cruel to him. The fact that he just sort of gets run over. And they do say later, don't they? Danny Pink died saving the world. No, he didn't. He got sort of run over off screen. And dear Joan Blackham is just at the other end of the phone going, oh no, which seemed like, I suppose they were just going for a cruel quirk of fate, but it did feel like, oh, they're going to return to this and do something proper. And what they instead do is have him as a sort of half-dead, zombified thing, still in touch with his humanity, which I suppose is a thing. But I think the whole dead people still feeling things after death was a curious note to make, especially when you resurrect a much-loved character like the Brigadier as a sort of rotting corpse in a cyber suit, especially when it's acknowledging within the fiction the recent passing of the actor who played the guy. I think all of that stuff is, well, I'm sure. Well, has anyone chosen those episodes? Nobody has yet. So, and I haven't revisited them in a long time, and I shouldn't be now, because this is one of, again, those very brilliant. The picture composition in these episodes is excellent, by the way. Paul Wilmshurst, the director, has a great eye. Look at that light behind her and the way that she's in focus at the front. But this is one of those simple things, although I'm sure this effect isn't actually that simple, especially as she's moving and the way that she rubs one way and the word's the same and then rubs the other, and it changes. But when I mean simple, I mean it's not a monster crawling through a television or bestriding an ocean or smashing through a door or whatever. It's some chalk on a board being wiped and changing words, and that is, to me, another example of Stephen Moffat's great gift for taking something very simple and very evocative, chalk on a board that takes us back to school. We can feel it, we can smell it, and using it to. That's a bit like the silence, isn't it? With the tally scrawled and etched everywhere, and it's just one word, dying, which ties into the sort of dreamy, slightly weird thing. But it's also, it's that simple thing of taking a word or a gas mask or a crack in the wall and giving it the Doctor Who treatment, which means that if something familiar is in an incongruous setting, it can suddenly be, I think, scarier and creepier than any amount of latex or monstrousness. And I think Stephen Moffat is really, really good at that. I like this house that they live in. I do envy them their staircase. And this is brilliant because now we've established that the Doctor is communicating with Clara through the medium of chalk on the board in her dream. So as she's walking away from him yelling out her name, and again, I think Moffat is very good at creating those things that are bespoke to an episode, like the echo of people in the collar in Silence in the Library, or the statues in the caves, and you suddenly have a revelation that makes you go, oh my God, that means, which wouldn't work in any other circumstance and wouldn't work unless he'd set these things up to exist and have power within their own particular episode. But they are unique to this particular setup, and he has to explain them to an audience. He has to set up the science of it, if you like, and then, of course, if you're following it, it really, really works when he does has her running away from her name written in capitals, or whichever other manifestation in those other examples that I gave. So he'll come up with these very, very clever ideas that work within the episode, and gives them a power, which I think is really, really good writing. I mean, just getting a plot out there is hard. Writing Doctor Who scripts is hard. I've tried to do it as an exercise, and I've written stuff, and I've written stuff that's gone okay. I mean, albeit for radio, so I don't have to worry about the visual element, which can help sometimes. But just plotting an episode of Doctor Who that you want to be just more than aliens invade, aliens get blown up, and you have character moments and jeopardy in between. These things, and sometimes I think Stephen Moffat's episodes with the timey-wiminess, I've said this before, sometimes I've found have been a little too clever, almost too clever. Can you be too clever? You can be. But again, I mean no inference of smugness when I say too clever, and I'm aware that some people, when they say something's too clever, suggests that the person who's doing it is full of themselves. I think Stephen Moffat is simply trying to write interesting, provoking, intriguing adventures, and the fact is that he's really, really good at sort of layering stuff. He's got a mind that seems to me to be post-it notes all over a room with strings. That's not how I write. I don't even like writing a storyline. I prefer to sort of write a script and let it flow, and then maybe work backwards then and insert things and move things around. But he seems to have all these threads joining together that is really hard to do, and I think that sort of stuff works really well. I think all of the stuff that Stephen Moffat does very well works very well in this episode. The clever stuff, the twisted realities, the twist upon twist, the flirting with ridiculousn's, the awkwardness, and then the sentimentality. All. This sort of cynicism, the smartness, the smart alecky stuff, walking hand in hand with actually something that's very human and deeply moving. And this is very sad. I'm not sure how I feel. I kind of allow this episode things I might not allow in other episodes. Is that because it's Christmas? Is it because of the nature of the episode? Is it just because I like the episode? Because how do we rationalise it? This isn't, because we're having our cake and eating this, because this isn't Danny Pink. Danny Pink is dead, and yet the dream gives Danny Pink his hero moment, which is lovely for the actor. Of course, you get to say to the actor, "Oh, come back and be a Doctor again." You get a moment, because it's not very fun just to play a figment of the imagination, which is all a dream is. So the actor gets the nice thing, which I think is fair, but also it works within the drama. And yet, of course, the reality of this within this fiction is that this is just Clara's brain doing this. Danny has no agency here. Danny is dead. This is a dreamed construction of Danny. And that makes us go, well, so how do we feel about this? Because we're being satisfied that Danny is being wise and Danny is being kind and Danny is being comforting. But he's not. Danny is dead. And what does that say to us about dreams? Because dreams are bastards. Nice dreams are bastards. Gosh, the amount of times that I've been in a tricky or a sad situation, I've been through, for example, I'll use my, divorce as an example. When I was living at my friend's house and the lowest ebb I've ever been. Of course, every night I went to sleep and I'd drink myself to sleep because I didn't want to go to sleep. And I would go to sleep and I'd have a dream where everything was fine and my soon-to-be ex-wife was still in love with me, and I hadn't lost everything, and I wasn't sleeping. And of course, then I would wake up in my mate's house, and none of that was true. So we worry about having nightmares, but the crazy thing about dreams is that under certain circumstances, nice dreams are almost worse than nightmares. I'd rather be drowning in quicksand, and I do have those dreams. For me, the dream it's when I get wrapped up in the duvet, and because I've always hated Lance Henriksen in Aliens, being in that pipe. That sort of claustrophobic thing. And I sometimes, if I'm wrapped in the duvet, I'm sort of half awake and I can't move, and I stop breathing, and I do stop breathing a lot. I've got an iWatch now, or whatever it's called, that will sometimes wake me up and tell me I've forgotten to breathe. So I have a weird sort of sleep apnea thing going on. So I do have terrifying dreams, and I do have dreams that I wake up from with a start, but I also... And they can be, especially those ones where you think you've woken up and you can't move. I have those, the sort of dream paralysis thing, which is why I think having a Doctor Who story about dreams is such a smart idea, because the best Doctor Who stories, I'm surprised we haven't had a Doctor Who story that's tapped into something so obvious as a place where fright and terrifying things can happen. And it's because, of course, you have to worry about it ever being a cheat, and cheats can. Yes, I have woken up for dreams, and that is something that I think we all recognise, and that's what Moffat is so good at, is that you go, oh yeah, no, I have thought of that, and now he's turned them into a Doctor Who monster, which is superb. But as I say, a benign dream, a nice dream, can be worse than a bad dream. And here, of course, so we're just over halfway through the episode, and what we think we know about the episode, and I know I clocked this when I was watching it this time, is that yes, just before Santa comes in, they are pretty much smothered by the beasts, but they're not. The camera loves Capaldi. He's got such a presence, and he knows exactly how to play, if not directly to it, but how to position himself in it and how to direct his energy. And he looks great. There is a reason thin people work well on television, because I think it does give him. I've just been watching Emma Thompson in Down Cemetery Road, and she has a silhouette not unlike Peter Capaldi's in this, with the short hair and the sort of slightly sort of funky gait, and it really does work. It does help to make your program have a sort of quirky energy about it. If you have a sort of gangly slightly sort of funky, older, trendy lead. This is a very this is a brilliant Moffatism where he takes something that has the simplest of ingredients, 4 people with a book and the words, and you have a little character moment as well, shown as so full of these bombers. Why did I get chocolate? And we think we know where we're going with this. Oh, they each have a different word. They have a random word, and then the second one goes, "We are all dead," and then suddenly that pulls the rug from under you. It's like, oh, it's not just that they've all got different words; they've now made a sentence that has terrible consequences. And this is Natalie here playing the head of the base. Oh, you can see the snow outside the porthole. So this is a great idea. Of course you've been dreaming, because it's got effing Santa Claus in it, and so part of you as a viewer is now going, of course, thank God that Santa Claus isn't Santa Claus, because I would have been really annoyed if Santa Claus was Santa Claus. But of course, Santa Claus exists in a dream. You go, phew. So yeah, this is a story about aliens and bases under siege, and I'm grown up and I'm watching a proper program that doesn't have silly fantastical things in it, apart from aliens. And it's a great idea that the dream aliens are keeping you within the dream by being cunning, and of course the dream within the dream. I'm Santa Claus. Nick. Oh yeah. And that line about what Santa Claus is brilliant. He's so good at stuff like that, of making something profound hidden within a joke or within an apt phrase. He's so good at clocking into as profundity that is hidden in plain sight. He's very good, Mick Frost, because he's a traditional Santa. He's got a slightly sinister edge, but then he's a Santa with a modern twist as well, and he manages to do all 3 of those things and synthesize them. And I like the fact that the elves have got normal name. Ian, I mean, come on. And yes. So Nick Frost is obviously a big guest star. Well, yes, indeed, he gets his name at the beginning of the story, and of course he's called Nick Frost. So he's Saint Nick, and he's Frost. So I mean, it's not only does he look like Santa Claus, he's got a Christmassy name. Nominative determinism. He was always going to be in a Doctor Who Christmas special. And I like it. I mean, this. Dreamy Wimmy. These two banter with each other very well, I think. And again, Stephen Moffat is not afraid to sort of needle himself and needle his own Doctor about his bedside manner. And I don't mind the bit where it gets slightly meta, where he goes, Santa Claus isn't doing the big scientific explanation. I'm wary of that stuff, but it's because secretly I sort of kind of like it. But I also don't think it should do it too much. I don't think the program should get too reverential about the fact that it's a program that's very Buffy, isn't it? And it's very refreshing when Buffy did it, but now it's become a bit of a cliche. But Doctor Who's entitled to do it, and it's certainly entitled to do it in a Christmas special that's all about dreams. Yeah. Oh, and this is a bit of a Murray Gold hero moment, and you want some of these hero moments. I mean, they work really well in Doctor Who, but they work especially well at Christmas. And Believe in Santa. And Believe in Santa is a great refrain, actually, because Christmas is sometimes about, it is really, isn't it? It's about embracing sort of stuff. I mean, especially these days when there's a lack of religion in our lives. But you kind of accept all the things that religion has given us, the Christian religion in this country has given us, to create the iconography and the ceremony that goes with this thing that gives us a sense of unity, even if it's unity in being humbuggy about it. And I accept that some people are like that, and that's fine. You have to do you. I'm much more traditional in that sense. In that God bless us, everyone. That's Dickens. That's the Christmas Carol. And Doctor Who could do that too. But the fact that we are united by. I love hearing the same songs. It actually saddens me that on Christmas Eve now, because I've done a couple of Christmas playlists, I haven't heard the Christmas songs as much as I would like to, because I love the build up to Christmas when you go, oh, it's this song, it's that song, it's Driving Home for Christmas, That'll Be Christmas by Thea Gilmore. So that's my favourite under the radar one. You don't know that one? Oh, get that one. Terry Wogan played it one Christmas, probably around this time. It was certainly in the same flat of chaises that I watched this in when I first heard that, and it's become a favourite of mine. Oh, I mean, Wogan's gone now. But I'm rather sad that after Christmas Day, it feels like you don't want to be hearing those Christmas songs anymore. They still do hang over for the next few days, but you kind of go, no, but now they're disappearing and they're going back into the ether, only to be brought out again no earlier than December the 1st. And I like that. It's a bit Catholic of me. I'm not remotely Catholic, but I like denying myself Brussels sprouts, certain chocolates, certain things that I only have at certain times of the year. And so now I'm feeling that. I'm thinking I haven't listened to the Christmas songs as much as I would like. That's partially because I listen to podcasts when I'm walking the dog. Anyway, this is brilliant, and I like this Doctor theme as well. I love the way he runs too. He's got a brilliant run. What I hate about the obvious, missing it, and we all do that. I've just found a bin, a food recycling bin that we've lost for 3 weeks, and it was by the sink in the back room where I'd looked at it 3 times. See, this I deleted you. This is very much. This is the Doctor of the Lodger, isn't it? This is the Doctor. It is a sort of Moffat-y thing, even though this one is embodied by Capaldi rather than Matt Smith. But yes, that idea that he's too busy to remember what people's names are, that is the antithetical to the Doctor we sort of know of old, who remembers my old friend Councillor Headin or whatever, and my dear friend this, and I remember you. Actually, it's a much more modern thing for the Doctor to sort of go, yeah, I love little humans, and I treasure the individual, and there's no one more important than Bert the Miner or whatever. I know it's Cliff Jones that says that, but the idea that I've always thought the Doctor celebrating the individual, even the humblest of individuals, is one of the great things about it. It's a program about all of time and space and everything in between, and great universal battles and explosions. But actually, what it comes down to is that the individual, the Doctor, we invest in the characters, even if it's just somebody who's working on a base, and we're sad when they die. And often, the emotional high point of a Doctor Who story is when a guest character, because we generally know the regulars will survive, loses their life, and we feel that. And I think that's why Doctor Who has always touched me and made me perhaps overly sentimental as I am about individuals and people, which is why I'm obsessed about obituaries and giving people their proper dues when they die, etc., which is why this is also a very busy time of year for me, when I have about 4 different obituary things going on. Very, very dead. And again, that does again a slightly different thing with the book. It's like, oh, they've all got the same word. Oh, but it is still a sentence. So I do like that element of the Capaldi Doctor, even though it's not what I sometimes don't like. I don't like it when Tom Baker does his sort of, oh, poor Vash, as though he doesn't give a monkeys in full circle when Vash is dead. I do like it with Lawrence Scarman, yet I don't. I think it's cruel and I think it's horrible, but I think it's brilliantly acted. But it is not sort of how I see the Doctor, who I see as a benevolent wizard. But yes, it kind of works for this Doctor, even though it does with the Doctor not what I would naturally want him to do. I would want him to remember everybody, but it is perfectly in keeping with the idea of this busily intelligent, constantly cog working inside the head alien who, it doesn't mean he doesn't like them, but he's just existing slightly detached from everybody, and that kind of works. And it's it's a new thing to do with the Doctor in many ways that is almost contrary to how I see the Doctor sometimes, and yet it's absolutely true to itself, and it kind of works. We have to mention Michael Troughton, who I think sort of gets slightly lost in this because he gets the least to do. And here he's the only person that dies. But how lovely, because I'd visited Michael when we did the commentary for The Underwater Menace. And at that time, he wasn't really acting because he had some family reasons not to. And he'd had a brilliant acting career. He's superb in The New Statesman, which was a massive show that he was superb in. And he was in Sean's show and playing a very different character in Sean Hughes's comedy show. You know, he was a big and in demand and consistently working actor, as well as, of course, being a Troughton. But he'd not been in Doctor Who, unlike David, who'd been an extra in Enemy of the World, and then had a speaking part in the War Games, and was then, of course, King Peladon. Michael had never managed to be in the show, and I wouldn't expect the current show to really care about that, because yes, I know it brings back old companions and stuff like that, but I don't know. It was a pleasant surprise that they'd given space and acknowledgement to Michael Troughton, especially as he hadn't really been acting and had only really relatively recently, I think, returned to acting. And I think, but you know, needs no charity because he's a really, really good actor. But the acting world is very unforgiving and can often neglect people who really deserve to be working. So I think it's a nice thing that Michael Troughton manages to step in his father's and his brother's footsteps and be a part of Doctor Who. And it seems good that it happens in a Christmas episode too. But that said, he does sort of have the least to do, as was mentioned in one of the correspondence. But this is great. We have another hero moment, and I mean, I love the Santa in the sledge thing in Doctor Who. That I don't know. It just seems to be the melding of two wonderful things that I love. I love Christmas. The idea that Santa could be in Doctor Who and not ruin Doctor Who for me is nice. But again, Moffat is very good at doing hero moments, doing a build up to a reveal, or to when somebody comes and saves the day at just the right point. And this weirdly sort of slightly reminds me of Superman, which is a film I associate with Christmas because the big films are always on at Christmas. Is that the flying scenes do have that slight CSOE thing and the fake wind and you have to be quite generous to it. But I love she's so good at doing this the genuine sort of love for the Doctor, but it's not a cloying love because they also prickle against each other and fight and kick and bite and all of that. And I hadn't until it was mentioned in the correspondence, the idea that this Doctor would have fun riding on the sledge and still have the child within him is lovely for us all, I think, and feels beautifully Christmassy. And that's very chocolate boxy, isn't it? That I think that's a model shot with the snow on the roofs, and that feels like what you want of a sort of fairy tale kind of Christmas. And then we have something that I always love to appear in Doctor Who, which is Big Ben. I don't know why I love Doctor Who appearing in Big Ben, and they do it quite a lot in the new series, and I never get bored of it. I mean, I remember being so excited seeing the alien spaceship from Aliens of London crash into Big Ben in that trailer for the show. And there's something about Big Ben being in Doctor Who that never fails to. But I think because it's so sort of quintessentially British, and I'm a British person, and I don't know, it sort of comforts me, but also makes it feel like the show's doing something rather special. And I love the fact that they don't. And this is hard to do because you don't want to say somebody who works in a shop is a failure, and I don't think it's doing that. what it's saying is that Christmas is all about dreams and imagination and magic and things being special, and then reality comes crashing in, and we all have to go back to work. So everyone's about to wake up in their proper times and places in the same way that we all wake up on Boxing Day. And Christmas lengthens a little bit for me because my birthday is on the 2nd of January. So I allow myself to feel that all of that period is quite special before everything comes crashing to an end on January the 3rd. Then I have nothing to look forward to until the following Christmas. Maybe that's why I love Christmas so and look forward to Christmas so. But this idea that their lives are different, and this, the fact that she doesn't even realise she's a wheelchair user, which, again, the ungenerous could read that and go, oh, her life's not so good because she's disabled. I don't think it's doing that. I think it's just saying her dream was very detached. The person, all of these people, the lives that they thought they had are markedly different in reality. And I love Shona's sort of attempt to keep the reality going. I haven't really talked about these actors. Natalie, I met after this at a party because she was a colleague of Chez's. She was in Coronation Street. So I met her at a birthday party and I was like, oh, I bet I can do a Who's Round with her. And she was lovely. And she doesn't live that far away. And it's never happened, not because she's resistant. I've never asked her. But I just assumed, oh, this will be something I can ask her at some point. And it's never quite happened. Faye Marseille, I think, does this beautifully. Santa, can I stay a bit longer? And I've spent a Christmas like that, in a place like that, on my own. I didn't mind the Christmas I spent on my own, and I'm at pains to say that when I talk about anybody being at Christmas on their own. And my friend Sarah Milliken did a brilliant thing for years where she reached out to people who are on their own, not to be patronising and say, oh, because if you're on your own, you're having a sad time. Because and I hope anybody out there who's listening on their own doesn't think that I think that. There's a meta thing there, Thrones Marathon, because she's in Game of Thrones. So that's a nice little meta thing that we can see, and that's a nice little touch. But there is a sort of weird melancholy to Shona there, but I think it manages to do that thing of I think it would be a bum note to say, so these people's lives are crap because they're not the lives of their dreams. I actually see it as the opposite of that. I see it that this says that life is precious because it is a mixture of dreams and reality. We all have our dreams, and none of us ever quite fulfill all of our dreams. Christmas allows us, if we want to have a day when we sort of force ourselves to sort of think about those things. And some of us reject them because we're feeling cynical or because of where we are in our lives. And some of us, it could be a new beginning or an acknowledgement of an ending or whatever. But I don't think the show is saying Shona's life is crap and that because she works in a shop and isn't a scientist on a base, she's somehow a failure. I think it's in fact saying that our lives are about dreams getting crashed into by reality, but in a way that's okay. And it's sad. I mean, I do think life is sad, but I don't mean that in a bad way, because sadness is almost what makes us human, and sadness makes us appreciate happiness, which is, as I say, why I find Christmas quite melancholy, because I'm a soppy thing, but also I quite enjoy that sadness because it's a reminder to me that when I do things that I like and have had all the wonderful things that have sometimes happened that I've forgotten to enjoy because I've got an eye on the sadness. I think it sometimes sharply pulls us up to go, no, so because you're aware of the bittersweet nature of life, it means you have to taste the sweetness when it comes. This is a bold reveal, and I think these things are hard to pull off, but I think they do a decent job with this. And I think Capaldi is absolutely astonishing. He does so much. He's got he's got a melancholy about him, but it's not a self-indulgent one. I think put them on and absolutely everything. He's funny. He's full at so many bon mots like that. Moffat. He's very, very good at things like that. But also, and I've keep missing saying that's beautiful as well. And this again makes a virtue of the fact that the Doctor sort of goes, oh, all humans look the same. I can't really tell one of you apart. So why would a 70-year-old one look any different from a 25-year-old one? And that kind of makes sense of that sort of undoctorish yet doctorish stuff. And my partner actually has prosopagnosia, which means she doesn't recognise faces at all. So it does have a sort of slight basis in reality. But also, it's a way of distancing the Doctor from us in a way which I think the Doctor should be. I don't think the Doctor should be our friend. I think he should be a character he's a distant wizard, somebody to aspire to. And I think sometimes it's a mistake for us to look for identification within the Doctor. And that comes with a price for the Doctor, but I also don't want the Doctor to be navel-gazing and maudlin. And I think Capaldi does it brilliantly because there is that sort of melancholy about him, but it's lurking beneath the surface. And he's so good, and I think this is beautiful the way that he does this. That is, I find that he has to help her pull the candle. And every Christmas is last Christmas, which again, Moffat is so good at coming up with those very clever bits of wordplay that do then make a very profound point. And every Christmas is last Christmas, and that is why Christmas is both happy and sad. And life needs to be happy and sad, and that's the price we pay for it. But things like this enable us to come to terms with that, and accept the sadness as a blessing in a way, which is actually in the end the only way that you can deal with it. And again, it then kind of makes you appreciate what you've got, not what you haven't. And I am somebody that used to pride himself for being a glass half empty sort of person, and that is still my natural state. That's still how I'm wired, and sometimes my romanticism has to work hard to override my wiring, and that is why we have these things in our lives that are unquantifiable in a way. The special atmosphere of Christmas, the beautiful nonsense of Doctor Who, the programme that is at once scary and comforting, ridiculous yet moving and true, mad yet scientific and sensible. And it's funny that this was supposed to be Clara's ending, and yet it does strike the right note. I think you do want to go out in triumph, much as I've just talked about how important it is that Christmas is sad. I think I love this. I love the snow. I love, and of course, having spent the whole thing saying Santa Claus is ridiculous, I don't want Santa Claus to exist in the Doctor Who universe. The fact that the coda goes, yeah, but he might, is entirely appropriate, because you can believe it and not believe it at exactly the same time. That's the same with living with happiness and sadness at exactly the same time. And in a world that is getting increasingly binary, anything that says two things that often work contrary to each other can exist in the same brain space is right and acceptable. And although the Doctor and Clara will return, no, the Doctor will return. Clara is the companion. I always slightly resist the idea that the show is, which is very much the modern show, that it's the Doctor and the companion. It's the Doctor. I mean, I got annoyed when Mel and the Seventh Doctor share share a caption at the end of episode 1 of Delta and the Bannermen because it's got such a big cast. It's like, no. The Doctor should always have their own caption. But credits have changed hugely since then. But let's not get into that because that's just a minor thing. So I have to choose my 5 favourite things about Last Christmas, an episode I thoroughly enjoyed. And I hope some of you are enjoying this on Christmas Day, and if so, as I say, a happy Christmas, whether you're amongst friends, whether you're on your own, whether you're driving, whether you're working. It's the connection is special. It certainly means a lot to me. So, my 5 favourite things. Well, I mean, Santa Claus. You have to. I think to have it's bold and audacious to have Santa Claus in Doctor Who, and I love the fact that he's there lurking, saying, "If I'm real, this is going to be stupid, and you're going to hate it." And then they do that volte-face at the end where they sort of go, but actually we're going to suggest he's real just because it would be kind of wrong if we didn't. And to have those contradictory things existing at the same time takes a deft touch, and it means that something has been straddled perfectly. And that's due to a number of things. Nick Frost is great. He's very bantery. He's not your traditional sort of yo-ho-hoer. He is a Santa Claus with a modern vernacular, and he's idiomatically it's quite incongruous to the lovely old-fashioned Santa Claus, which gives it a nice modern and sort of slightly Doctor Who-y twist. He's also very funny. He's great at the banter with both the elves. I think with the elves are great, but also with the Doctor. Ian Capaldi banter very, very well. And yes, and the fact that it's a Christmas episode and Santa is in it, and we have our cake and eat it because we have Santa in a Doctor Who story, but also it's a Doctor Who story about dreams. So therefore, it gives us the license to have that and not bring the whole program crashing down. And I think Stephen Moffat deploys him deftly in the story, and he's excellently played by Nick Frost. My second thing, I love the tangerine. I love the tangerine joke. I did an adaptation of Dario Fo's Accidental Death of an Anarchist in Edinburgh when I was a student. We got very, very good reviews, and I did the script myself, based on the original Italian, but I sprinkled it with modern references, and that's what you do with that play. Really, you have to keep it up to date. But I think my favourite character to write was the constable, who's a bit dim, and he goes, "Oh, I don't know things, sir," and he's easily manipulated, and it's a beautiful. There's wonderful comedy to come from that character. When I saw it at the National with Alan Cumming as the maniac, the constable was the first time I'd ever seen Mark Benton in anything. And of course, we know and love him now, and I think it was an early role for him. Trevor Cooper was in that too, and Lorcan Cranich. What a cast! And Alan Cumming was the maniac. He was superb. Anyway, let's not get into that. And I did it in Edinburgh, playing the maniac. My friend Giulio Maria Martino was the constable, and he was brilliant. But we had there's a line about Christmas, and I can't remember what it was, but I gave the constable a line that's not from the Dario Fo. It was an addition just because it was a piece of colour that I liked, where he said, "All I got for Christmas was a tangerine and some chocolate money," which of course were invocations of what I had at the bottom of my stocking. And in fact, I nearly got some today because I quite like the idea of there being tangerine, walnut and chocolate money at the bottom of the stocking. And we had those, and the chocolate money you'd always eat, but it would taste it. It's that chocolate that tastes like the one in the advent calendar, that you eat it, and especially if you eat it at breakfast time, it tastes of sick, and yet you have to do it anyway because you've been given chocolate. And that was in scarce supply, even the sick tasting chocolate. It was a treat. You had to have it. It's again one of those cognitively dissonant things of going, this is real. This is a real treat, even though I'm not enjoying the process of it at all. That's Christmas. And that you could add to that enforced jollity, work dues, whatever you want to do. It's always, isn't it, that that acceptance of stuff that you're doing because you have to. But again, I think that's good social conditioning. That is a good lesson for life. Even the sort of most important day of the year is a day when you are sometimes forced to do. You have to have bread sauce or Brussels sprouts, or choose cranberries, choose the food stuff that you don't like, and yet somehow I think we've lost our taste for this now that we're rather spoilt in this Western world, and people do have things that they like rather than I happen to like the traditional Christmas dinner, although we have a veggie version, but I think there's actually something to be said for having things that you don't like. I used to not like Brussels sprouts and various other things, but I used to eat them on Christmas Day because that is what you did. And actually, that is how then I developed a taste for those things. And I think there's a lesson there in experiencing things you don't like in order to overcome your dislike of them. And I think that's a great social conditioning. We've lost track of that now, and everything can become so bespoke. Even we were talking about what we were going to watch on television, and we're probably not going to watch much that has been scheduled by the channels this year, and I think that's a shame. I think there's something to be said for something that we all do that bonds us all, whether we like it or not. And of course, part of life is, again, learning to assimilate and enjoy and then oddly become fond of those things that we initially might not have liked to do. And we're losing that, and we're not any happier for it. There we go. That's my old man's observation, is that I think sometimes you should be forced to do things you don't like because you'll learn to like it, which I'm aware it makes me sound like somebody who was beaten every day and it didn't do me any harm. But nonetheless, I do think there's something to be said for that. So anyway, that's what the tangerine and the chocolate money and the walnut sort of sum up for me. But it chimes particularly with me because of that line in that play, but also because that's what we had, and I'm sort of rather fond of it. And I wish it was a tradition I'd kept up, but I haven't. Can I get a tangerine tomorrow and stick it in the bottom of Chez's stocking? She won't stick one in mine though. But the idea of doing that sort of tickles me. She can't eat chocolate, and she certainly wouldn't bother. We haven't got any nutcrackers, and of course I can't buy a single walnut. Anyway, I like the tangerine. It's a good running motif. It's got several good jokes attached to it, and it is our gateway to maybe believing, maybe, just maybe, and it does not do us any harm to maybe entertain. I don't, because I'm too cynical, and I don't. And again, I used to celebrate that, but I don't think it's actually worth celebrating. We can all be bloody realistic. We can all be down to earth. We can all poo-poo things. You see people do it on the internet all the time, don't you? Where somebody says, "Here's a nice thing," and somebody goes, yeah, but it's not. I think a reminder that part of us likes the idea of believing something we know is not true. Actually, again, is really part of being human, and it's also part of Christmas. So yes, please, to the tangerine. So that is number 2, Santa, the tangerine. Number 3, number three. Well, it got me. It did get me this time, and it was the moment where I checked. But again, because we have to bear in mind that when I watch these, when I'm talking over them, I miss so many good moments that as a viewer would catch me. But both times, and I have to be honest, I hadn't even remembered it from the first time round. But I think the bit, it's so simple, and he's so good. Good writers do economy so well. And it's like, kid with the gas mask cracking, that bit with the blackboard, which I think is really, really good. But just that moment, or maybe it's not even, I don't know if it was in the script. I don't know. So maybe I should give the actors credit. Whatever. The bit where the doctor goes to help Clara pull the cracker. Just such a simple moment where the Clara that he saw minutes ago, he wouldn't have had to have done that for. And there's a thing there about life being fleeting, which speaks to me a lot at the moment because, I'm probably going through a midlife crisis. I've already been through a midlife crisis because your 40s are quite do a lot of that. But now I'm 51. I haven't got to the bit where you get that contentment of going, oh well, I'm aware it's short, so I'm happy, and everything's in perspective. I feel like I've achieved nothing, and I've got little time left, and I have to achieve the things I want to achieve whilst no longer being relevant, and I also have to be not relevant for probably if I live another 35 years. Now, of course, I want to live another 35 years. I certainly don't want, I don't want it to come to an end anytime soon. But I also know that's quite an awful long time to live with being unsuccessful and irrelevant, and likely to be less successful and less relevant than I had the chance of being in the previous 35 years when I should have taken my chances while I could. So, all that comes to the fore, but it's just such a beautiful, sad moment, and yet it's a moment where they're both being beautifully kind to each other, and they're bonding, and it's beautiful in many ways, but also sad. And again, that's that wonderful dissonance that Christmas often sums up, and Doctor Who does so well, of something that is concurrently happy and sad, and it's just a beautiful moment between the characters, and it's just a nothing moment that speaks volumes, where the Doctor has to help her pull the cracker, and it's taking a recognisable thing, and a thing we associate with Christmas, and all of that, and it's a wonderfully human moment, which, seeing as Doctor Who is often about spectacle and excitement and fun and jokes and crazy aliens, actually, when that means that when it does the human moments, they really do sing. I think I am going to choose Faye Marsay as Shona, just because I think she's that sort of character that modern Who, I think, does particularly well. And I think young actors are actually a lot better now than they perhaps were in 30 years ago. We're not used to seeing those characters, I think, so well in classic Who, but also I think she does that tricky thing of saying, because Doctor Who has to celebrate, and I'm conscious of using a word like ordinary, but I consider myself ordinary. We're all ordinary, and Doctor Who, there's a show about the extraordinary, which is again why I don't think the show should ever try to say, oh, you're like the Doctor. The whole point is that the Doctor is this aspirational figure that we will never be like. And actually, in the end, you realise that's okay. And you allow these special things to lift your life. But they only lift your life if they are in contrast to it. And the reason we turn to the excitement and special things, and of course, that all of those things come with danger, and that's the whole point. And then danger is adrenalized. It's exciting. It provokes your adrenal glands. It gives you a kick. But of course, we would be terrified if real life was like that. So Doctor Who allows us all of those things in a safe, containable way, because it's not real, because it's aspirational, because it's wizardry. And actually, it's in contrast to our ordinary lives. So I don't use the word ordinary pejoratively, but I think it's important that a show can say, even somebody with the sort of humblest of lives in terms of in the universe of Doctor Who, so working in a shop and living on her own and spending Christmas on her own, is somebody that is special, and that we like, and that we are touched by, and that we connect with, even though she is not actually connecting with anybody, and she loses that connection. Love that bit where she says, can I stay just a bit longer? And then she's gone. That is so desperately sad. And yet, then we go back to her, and whatever has happened to her in her dream world, she ends this episode with a tick, with a positive thing, with a reinvigorization. Is that a word? And Christmas is her sort of marker to take stock and to move forward. Now, the dream has provoked that, and the dream has allowed her to be these things that she currently isn't in life. But she's young. She's obviously, and we see that obviously she has potential because we like her. She's sparky and she's funny. So we're not patronising her at all. In fact, the show is saying, this person is somebody of great brilliance and potential in a way. who life is currently not dealing with brilliantly, and we never get the answer to her story, but we end on a note of hope, having been told that everything that she had in her dreams was way more spectacular than her life is currently giving. And I think, again, that's hard to do without seeming like you're patronising the character, or without seeming like you're saying real life is shit compared to exciting adventures, because I don't think it's doing that. I really don't. And in fact, in many ways, I think what happens, and the reason characters leave the Doctor, is because for all the excitement that the Doctor seems to provide, actually everybody goes back, which is why I actually think the show makes a mistake these days when people leave the Doctor and go and fight for UNIT or become Earth defenders or travel. The whole point, I think, is that it's a trade-off. You go, well, I have these amazing adventures, and then I go back. Most of I'll probably now think of loads that didn't, but the classic companions. Yeah, I know Joe went up the Amazon, but it was still stuff that was containable within an Earth setting and with reality and with things that any of the viewers could do, if you like, and that you leave the Doctor behind, and so normality comes at a price, if you like, but those dreams and those excitements also come at a price, because they come at the price of danger and actually not settling down. Everybody decides to settle down in the end, which gives the Doctor that sadness, that it's nice that the Doctor has, if it's not played too front and centre, if it is unspoken, like it often is in Peter Capaldi's performance because it's so brilliant, but also it's when it's inherent in the nature of the character. You don't need to sort of stress it and emphasise it. It's there in the fact that everybody leaves the Doctor and the Doctor carries on travelling, and that is happy sad, And my final thing, so what was that? What did I choose then? Oh, I chose Faye Marsay and the character of Shona. And my final thing is, it hit me, and I often underestimate the Doctors and the companions, but I knew the Doctor wasn't getting chosen for this one. I'm choosing Stephen Moffat. This to me is everything that Stephen Moffat does well. Tricksy, layered plotting that is actually very rewarding, and that surprises you and yet makes sense and is satisfying. It's not too clever or too obscure. It's full of brilliant one-liners. He is so good at funny lines and so good at lines that are true to character, that make you like those characters and make those characters. Sometimes it can if there's too much of it, like River Song, and sometimes it's very witty and quippy and clever, and I love all of that stuff and it's brilliant. But sometimes that stuff can be a bit distancing, and can be a bit self-conscious and a bit arch. And look, if I was that good at writing witty, smart lines, I wouldn't hold back either. But I'm not. I think he's so funny. I think he's brilliant with words, and I think he's brilliant at turning words on their heads or making them make a sense that, like the obvious, was there until you missed it, and the whole thing about, and because I was going to choose Every Christmas is Last Christmas, but that to me seems all part and parcel of what Stephen Moffat is and what Stephen Moffat brings to the show. The flirting with the ridiculous, the taking of the familiar. Santa Claus, Christmas specials do that anyway because they need a certain amount of Christmassiness, but that seems to me to play to Moffat's strengths, because he takes familiar things and makes them scary or skews them or shines a different light on them. So yes, it's the perfect Stephen Moffat story for me. It's spiky, it's funny, it's imaginative. It's very well structured and tightly sort of plotted in terms of he knows exactly what he's doing. He manages to create the reality within the episode that means that then certain things that could only work in this episode work and they hit. And he's got all that brilliant stuff with the simplicity of the words on the chalkboard, the bit with the books, words again. He's so good with words. And then with jokes, I love the joke about Alien. I love the joke about, Santa Claus going, well, of course it's a dream. It's got Santa Claus in it. And it's got this doctor, this crazy wizard in the police box, which again flirts with being meta, and is brilliant because it turns the joke upon the doctor. I love that gag. And in fact, that gag itself could be a favourite moment because at home you're going, yeah, good, I'm glad they've acknowledged Santa Claus isn't real. Oh no, they can't not acknowledge that the doctor's not real because the doctor is real in this. And that's playing with form, that's playing with perception, that's playing with reality, and that is again appropriate to a thing that is all about dreams and reality and perception. So it's stonkingly clever, but not again in a way that is somebody being a sort of smart-ass wagging his finger at you. You are totally involved with it, you're in on the joke and you enjoy the joke. But it's not just a joke because it speaks to what the whole story is about, and it's about perception, and it's about the attraction of dream worlds, but also the harsh reality that we can't live and exist in a dream world. It's not sustainable, which is profound. So Stephen Moffat, this is him at his very best. What are the things that Steve Hatcher has chosen? Well, he said he'd chosen 5 obvious things, which makes me now hope, a bit like hoping that Santa exists, a bit like hoping all those cynical old me going, oh, but there's a part of me that that does hold out a hope that I'll win the lottery, that all the missing episodes will turn up. I like to think I'm one of those people that doesn't believe in things like that, and yet I do when my head is on the pillow about to go to sleep. Those are exactly the sort of things I harbour the idea that they might, and I don't want there to not be a hope of those things. And here I am hoping that, again, for another Christmas, I actually win this. I never win Happy Times and Places. I do so rarely, but I did with the Christmas one. I did with the Christmas Carol. So the hope that is killing me right now, especially as Steve dangled the idea that I might do well in this, is probably just about to be extinguished. But for now, in this moment, I can dream.
So for the first thing that I'm choosing as one of the best things about Last Christmas, it's the character of Shona, played by Faye Marsay. Now, she's initially presented as a scientist, but before the end of the story we discover that she's actually a shop worker who's preparing to spend a lonely Christmas on her own with a list of films to watch, and the scientist identity is just part of a dream. Shona, as we meet her, is very much the skeptic. She's a scientist who refuses to take anything, especially Santa Claus, on face value. She's funny and down to earth, and we first meet her attempting to go through the ward where the dream crab victims are, with her headphones on, doing an absolutely awful little dance in order to distract herself from thinking about the crabs. Shona is utterly charming, as is her dreadful dance, and she's chatty and she's up for adventure, and she's really one of the great could-have-been companions of Doctor Who. As I said, it was strongly rumoured that Clara was going to leave, that Jenna Coleman would leave the series after this episode, and that Faye Marsay playing Shona would carry on as the Doctor's companion. Well, I think we probably know that at the last minute Jenna Coleman decided she wanted to stay on for another series, so that opportunity wasn't there. I think that's sort of a pity, really, because Clara was never quite as good again after this episode. The feeling persisted that perhaps she had her time, and Faye Marsay went on to bigger and better things, and the opportunity to cast her in Doctor Who had gone, I suppose. So there we are. Nonetheless, my first pick is Shona, played by Faye Marsay.
Well, that's a point to me, because your first pick, Steve, was my last. But now, confession time, because you last heard my voice just before Steve chose his things. At my time, it was 3 a.m. on Christmas Eve. Well, now it is 20 to 2. I'm a night owl. On Christmas Day, I just felt, but partially because I'd stayed up till 3 a.m. on Christmas Eve, but and I'd intended to finish this at some time during Christmas Eve. Didn't happen. I've been cooking, etc. But also, I feel like there's something nice about recording something on Christmas Day. I'd quite happily do something live on Christmas Day, actually, if through the night. I think there's something quite nice about that. But of course, I do have other commitments. I've got a Christmas dinner to cook tomorrow. But I wanted to do something that kind of made me there, even though you'll be listening to this at a different time, but on the day. So here I am on the day celebrating the fact that I've got a point for choosing Shona, and so has Steve. Could this be another Christmas win? Because Steve has chosen the same thing as I. 1 out of 5. Let's see what his second choice is. Oh, by the way, Happy Christmas.
My second pick is the horror story that is Last Christmas, the horror elements. You really have to admire the nerve of Stephen Moffat putting on a full-on horror film on BBC One on Christmas Day. There are some genuinely shocking moments of a kind you rarely get to see in Doctor Who. The concept of the dream crabs is not a particularly original one, but they're fabulously realised. The scene where they attack the Doctor and his friends coming down from the ceiling is a genuine jump scare. It immediately is, and it's immediately undercut by rescue coming from Santa riding Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. All the way through, we've got this just juxtaposition of really strong, scary moments and silliness, which is fabulous. It actually makes the scary stuff more scary. It doesn't spoil it at all. Then we have also the even more scary in my book, the scene where Professor Albert, played by the lovely Michael Troughton, is killed. The crew have worked out that the crab victims in the hospital ward are in fact themselves. And as they watch on the video screens, they see them get out of their beds and come towards them. And then in the most horrific scene, the crab-controlled versions come through the monitors and menace the crew. Again, it's Santa who comes to the rescue, this time on his sleigh, and they all fly away to safety. It's scary and it's silly. Now, on the subject of horror films, there's that fabulous line when Professor Albert, as I say, beautifully played by Michael Troughton, mentions the film Alien. There's a horror movie called Alien, the Doctor asks aghast. That's really offensive. No wonder people keep invading you. So, the second choice there is the horror elements in the story.
Oh, well, to my horror, that is not one of the ones that I've got. Oh, now I feel like I've lost it all. It's amazing how quickly you can... I have been following the cricket. Sorry if you're listening to this way down the line. We're currently doing very badly at cricket. I'm sure if you're listening to this in the future, we'll be playing brilliantly because anyway. Yeah, I don't want to be too time specific. This is recorded at that time. We're having a bad cricket tour of Australia, but I'm aware that to some of you, cricket is an anathema. But I rather like it. Well, I did rather like it until this particular Ashes series built up my expectation and then crushed me, much as Steve has just done by having chosen the same thing as me for his first choice, but not the second thing as me for his second choice. So it's even Stevens. But yes, the horror is good. And I do love that line about Alien. I think that's one of the funniest exchanges in the whole thing. As I say, it's full of those because of that man Moffat. And I think it is a really brilliant line. But it is a good choice to do horror on Christmas Day, because a lot of the Christmas specials are either sort of, we think of ones that can conjure the past, like the Next Doctor, which has the sort of chocolate box oldie worldy stuff going on, or modern day but with snow and everyone's celebrating Christmas. But this one, it's not. The base is not particular. The base is not really Christmassy. It's Santa Claus coming to the base. So Christmas comes to the film Alien, which is different, but it works. And as because again, you can the Poseidon Adventure is a very Christmassy film. So Voyage of the Damned is a very has a Christmassy feel, apart from the fact it's got all the sort of trimmings as well, but it's the kind of film we associate with Christmas in the way that Alien isn't, and so it is quite an incongruous one, but it works. But I didn't choose that. 1-1, bah humbug.
My third choice is the conversation that takes place between Shona and Santa Claus, with the Doctor interjecting at the end. Well, I could very easily have picked Nick Frost's Santa Claus, who is, as I said before, the best on-screen representation of the character since Edmund Gwenn and Richard Attenborough. And he really is the perfect Santa. But no, I've not picked him. I've chosen that conversation. The conversation between Santa and a very sceptical Shona. Shona doesn't believe this is really Santa, but she plays along. And she asks all the questions that children ask when they start to stop believing in Santa Claus. Santa, of course, has an answer to all of them. She asks him, how do you get around all the children that there are in the world in one night? Santa's answer is obvious. There's a second sleigh. And reindeer can't fly, she says. No, of course they can't fly. It's a scientific impossibility, he says. That's why I feed mine magic carrots. This harks back to the beginning of the story where Santa meets Clara, and they basically make fun of her because of her believing that her parents provided the Christmas presents for her, as if that could possibly happen. Much more likely that Santa Claus does it. But anyway, back to the conversation with Shona. The Doctor then interjects and says, right, here's the killer question. How do you manage to fit in all the presents in the sleigh? Quick as a flash, Santa Claus comes back. It's bigger on the inside. How can the Doctor, of all people, answer that one? He can't, of course. He just gives a look and walks away. What is there more for him to say? It's a brilliant piece of scripting, a lovely conversation, and it perfectly highlights this interpretation of Santa Claus, who is funny, streetwise, witty, and to the point. And Shona, who is all the things I said about her previously, is again charming, funny, and so on. So there we are. The third choice, the conversation between Shona and Santa Claus.
Oh, Steve, not only did you choose something I didn't choose, although I invoked that moment, didn't I, of the bigger on the inside, or I certainly did in my head as being part and parcel of the reason I've chosen Stephen Moffat. And it is great, and the script is full of that stuff. But not only have you not chosen what I chose, you've also said, and I'm not going to choose Nick Frost as Santa Claus, having said your choices were going to be fairly obvious ones. I don't begrudge picking Nick Frost, but I might have chosen him in a different way. But I thought, no, let's not be too offbeat about this. Let's just go straight in, and that's one you haven't done. You've just told me you haven't done that. So of the next two, it's not going to be Nick Frost. So let's hope it's the one of my other three that are available. Oh, suddenly the odds of me starting Christmas off on high, on a ding dong, merrily on high, are actually not very high at all. Let's see what your fourth choice is, or if I already lost the ashes before we've even got to the end.
My fourth choice. Well, I rather think this is the one that absolutely makes this story for me. It's the intricate plotting. It's Stephen Moffat's script. It's plotting, the multi-layered dreams within dreams. Now, it's a thought that occurs to most people at some time, usually during those teenage years when people are exploring mind and philosophy and things. And it can come during a quiet moment when you're sitting alone, lost in thought, or it can come when you wake in the middle of the night, or present itself surrounded by the animated chatter of family and friends. All of a sudden, you can feel terrifyingly alone and begin to wonder, what if I'm imagining all this? What if I am, even at this moment, in a dream? Then comes the even more chilling thought. Perhaps I've just woken up. Perhaps everything I think has happened to me up to this point, in all my memories, knowledge and experiences, perhaps they're the dream. Perhaps everyone I know is a figment of my imagination. Who indeed am I? Am I the person I think I am? Or perhaps that's all part of the dream. For anyone with an imagination and an ability to look beyond the obvious, it's a moment of mind-blowing revelation which can transform forever how one looks at one's life and everything and everyone in it. Emphatically, it's a thought that's best avoided exploring too deeply, for that way lies madness. Nevertheless, the realization that our brains are capable of constructing and sustaining alternative realities of such complexity and detail as to be indistinguishable from real life is an important one for each of us. The question, how do we know we are not dreaming, is one that has inspired some of the greatest moments in science fiction and fantasy film and television. John Landis's 1981 horror classic, An American Werewolf in London, has David recovering in hospital from the attack which has killed his friend, and though he doesn't know it yet, turned him into a werewolf, and he appears to awaken from a series of increasingly bizarre dreams within dreams, featuring his dead friend, some Nazis, and Jenny Agutter, but then who hasn't had that dream? Probably best remembered and most highly regarded episode of Star Trek The Next Generation, The Inner Light, sees Captain Picard rendered unconscious by an alien probe, and in his dream state, while minutes pass for the Enterprise crew, Picard lives a full 40 years of life as the scientist Kamin, a member of a long-extinct species inhabiting a doomed world. The episode ends on a wistful note, with Picard restored to his crewmates but alone once more in his cabin, playing the flute that he mastered during his virtual life as Kamin, contemplating the loss of his very real dream home and family, and knowing that he now has the responsibility of keeping their memory alive. Now, if anybody has not seen this masterpiece of science fiction television, please do watch it. It remains immensely powerful, even after 30-odd years. Another best ever episode is Red Dwarf's Back to Reality, which sees the crew apparently killed, but then awakening to discover that for the last 4 years they've been playing the Red Dwarf Total Immersion game. The personas of Lister, Rimmer, Crichton and Cat are all constructs of the game, and in reality they are each the antithesis of everything they would want to be. They're on the point of committing group suicide when the ship's computer, Holly, manages to get through to them. And it is this reality which is the dream, an illusion caused by a toxic attack from the deadly despair squid. The hypothesis of this little subgenre is probably the Wachowskis' 1999 classic, The Matrix, but let's not talk about the sequels, in which Keanu Reeves, Neo, discovers that all of humanity is trapped in a dream reality, the Matrix of the title, controlled by a mysterious machine intelligence. But the idea returned to British television in spectacular fashion with Life on Mars in 2006 and its successor series Ashes to Ashes, in which the opening monologue of the parent series sets out the dilemma faced by trapped in the past cops Sam Tyler and Alex Drake. Am I mad, in a coma, or back in time? Throughout 5 series the mystery was maintained. Is Sam and then Alex in a coma-induced dream state, or are their experiences, including Gene Hunt and the other people they meet in the past, real in some way? It's finally, and somewhat disappointing, revealed in the finale of Ashes to Ashes that the world of 1970s and 80s cop shows is a sort of limbo, where the restless souls of dead police officers go to work out their issues while waiting for admission to paradise. So, Last Christmas isn't the first show by any means to go into these dreams within dreams. In fact, it's not even the first time that Doctor Who has used this idea. 1968's The Mind Robber begins with the Doctor's companions being lured out of the TARDIS by visions of their homes. The TARDIS is destroyed and the three travellers find themselves in the land of fiction, wherein they encounter a whole host of fictional allies and adversaries, before finally meeting and apparently bettering the master of the land of fiction. The story ends with the Doctor waking up from deep sleep in his armchair back in the TARDIS, having escaped the land of make-believe, or perhaps he was never there at all and the whole thing was a dream. Alternatively, perhaps the Doctor, Jamie and Zoe only believe they've escaped, whereas in reality they are still trapped and all subsequent Doctor Who stories are mere dreams. Or perhaps again, the first Doctor never regenerated and he, Stephen and Dodo are still prisoners of the Celestial Toymaker. Or perhaps the Doctor, having escaped from both of these dreamscapes, survives to regenerate into the third and then fourth Doctors, only to become trapped in the Matrix, the Time Lord one this is, at the conclusion of The Deadly Assassin, where he still remains. Or perhaps the sixth Doctor remains trapped there after the trial of a Time Lord. Can we be sure? 21st century Doctor Who had of course already delved into this territory with the splendid Series 7 story Amy's Choice, in which Amy Pond must choose between 2 alternative realities offered to her: domestic life with Rory or adventure with the Doctor, and whichever she decides is unreal will die. Of course, Amy eventually works out that neither alternative is real and that she's in danger of falling into a trap set by the Dream Lord, an evil incarnation of the Doctor. By choosing none of the above, she and the Doctor are able to defeat the Dream Lord. So, The ideas and concepts presented in Last Christmas are far from new, but it's the depth and intricacy of the plot which makes it so special. After the episode, nothing that we've seen can be absolutely guaranteed as having been real. We're left wondering. As the Doctor puts it, the big problem in telling fantasy and reality apart is that they are both ridiculous. So that's my fourth choice, the dreams within dreams, intricate plotting dreamscapes, dream.
Oh, I love the effort you put into that, Steve. Thank you ever so much. And I thought that was very educational. It was almost Reithian, if Lord Reith was all about digging into different science fiction classics and pulling threads together to unite them thematically. But also I like the dreams within dreams within dreams and all the stuff about the perception. I don't know if I get a point for that. I did choose dreams, didn't I? And that idea of dreams and reality and that stuff. Yeah, so I don't know if I get a point for that or not. So I almost hope that Steve doesn't choose one of mine for the next one, because then I'll just have definitively lost. Whereas at the moment, it's a bit like, I'm carrying on the cricket analogy here, which I never want to do. It's a bit like the malfunctioning snicko that has beset the Ashes. It means that some of the results aren't clear cut, and sometimes I'd rather definitively lose than have a moment that was scuppered by a technicality or a vagary. Sometimes, I sort of understand it in film sometimes when somebody's sort of caught and being threatened, and they say, they'd rather die. They just go, oh, just get it over with. Because in some way it's better that than just to sort of mess around, waiting for an untidy death. Where did I get? How have I got to there? Happy Christmas, everyone. Right, let's see. I think I chose dreams anyway, but I'll probably review that before. No, I won't. I'm just going to stick this out because I think my things were Nick Frost, Stephen Moffat, Faye Marseille as Shona, Nick Frost and the whole Santa thing, the holding of the hands with the cracker, and was my other one the dreams, the sort of skewing of reality and the way that dreams, to sort of highlight, the temporary nature of things. And I'm sure that was my choice. It was only yesterday. This is what's happening to my brain. Anyway, last one.
My fifth and final choice, and I'll be briefer with this one, is the false ending, the elderly Clara scene. And that false ending in which Clara is revealed to be an old lady 62 years after she last saw the Doctor, coming to the end of a rich, happy and fulfilled life, is both heartwarming and heartbreaking. And Jenna Coleman absolutely knocks it out of the park. She gives an extraordinary performance which shines through the latex that she has to wear as the older Clara. How absolutely superb this would have been had it served as the real conclusion to Clara's story. But the revelation that this is yet another level of dreaming and that a second chance for the Doctor and Clara is possible still makes for the perfect ending to the episode and the perfect lead-in to more adventures. But then again, where do dreams end? As our heroes head off for adventure, we see on the windowsill Santa's signature gift, a tangerine. Perhaps, just perhaps, the big man in scarlet is still around, and this is yet another level of dreaming. Maybe none of Series 9 that was to follow, including Clara's ultimate fate in Face the Raven, is real after all. Perhaps it was the dream crabs, rather than the raven, that did for her. So my final choice there? The elderly Clara scene, the false ending.
Oh, or did I choose the tangerine? Maybe I chose the tangerine dream. You've listened to this more recently than me. It was only yesterday. I lost anyway. It doesn't really matter. There are no winners and losers. There's always a loser. It's me. There's generally a loser. I lost, but partially because my brain is so addled. I can't remember what I said yesterday. This is terrible. I used to be able to remember everything. So there we go. Perhaps what is real and what is dreams? What is imagined? What is it's all? I mean, dreams are so temporary, aren't they? It seems everything I experience is temporary these days, as my addled brain melts ever quicker. But anyway, it's not the winning; it's the taking part. So you'll know how well I've done there, and I don't want to have to relive. I don't want. Yes, well, in terms of what the story asks us to, I don't want to have to go and relive that, only to find a different ending. So anyway, I lost. How much I lost, it depends on what I said less than 24 hours ago. A lot's happened since. We've had people round. I've been cooking. I've made all sorts of lovely veggie sausage rolls and puff pastry puffs. It's not the puffiest of puff pastry. Anyway, made lots of nice things and had some lovely people round. And now I'm round at yours, I hope, doing this, losing a Christmas fable. But thanks to Steve Hatcher, I thought he did some great choices and, made some illuminating contributions within his choices, which is very, very helpful, and makes this, means that the different guests always bring something to the table, which is what I think is an important part of this podcast. Otherwise, it's just me stammering and sometimes not regrouping once I've segued into a particularly arcane alleyway. Can you have an arcane alleyway? You can. Well, you are now. It's Christmas. Shut up. Right, that's it. I've got to go to bed, and I want to get this out for you on Christmas Day, so I will not beat around the bush. What am I going to get for Christmas tomorrow? I don't know. What are you going to get? Well, whatever you get, I hope you get some contentment, some feeling that you are a part of something, that if you're having a great Christmas, that feeling, is a part of that whole, or is just a nice little adjunct to it. And if you're not having a great Christmas, well, know that you are part of a community, and that, as this episode shows, things are temporary, both good and bad, and that's one of the cruelties but inevitabilities of life, and we have to sort of surrender to it in a way, but also we can defeat it by making those small beautiful moments and the things that unite us greater than the things that divide us. And I don't mind that I'm a bit of a Christmas traditionalist, and I use it to sort of contemplate, regroup, allow some indulgence, and fall hook, line and sinker for it. And I hope I've helped you to do that in some way, or if not, I just hope I've given you a distraction as you've peeled your spuds or gone for your Christmas run, if you're one of those. Well done. Or whatever it is you're doing. Sincerely, everybody who listens to this, I am so grateful to you. It really does mean a lot, and it particularly means a lot if I'm talking to you today on Christmas Day. If this is post-Christmas, hello, it's nice to stretch it out a little bit as well. I always stretch Christmas through to just into the new year when it's my birthday. So I'm hoping to sort of stretch my legs and relax and do all the things that one doesn't do the rest of the year. It's a bit of permitted pampering. But yeah, I'm so grateful to everybody that listens.
A final thought. During the summer and autumn of 2005, I began to wonder. Doctor Who had returned triumphantly after 15 and a half years and was now the nation's favourite TV show. The shops were full of Doctor Who merchandise, toys, stationery, clothing, books, magazines, the lot. For the first time since I was a child, it was cool to be a Who fan. On top of that, the England cricket team, my other obsession since childhood, had regained the much prized Ashes from a previously unbeatable Australia after a gap of 18 years. Life was strange, wonderful and brightly coloured, as if in a dream. It occurred to me, perhaps I was indeed dreaming, maybe lying in a coma somewhere. In many ways that was a more credible scenario than all of this wonder being real life. A year before Sam Tyler, I asked myself a similar question. Am I mad? In a coma? Or is Doctor Who cool? Who knows? Perhaps we're all dreaming even now, all these years later. Who knows where dreams begin and end?
Ha ha ha! A lovely final thought, Steve, and how amusing that you invoke the ashes, because when you recorded this 3 years ago, you could not have dreamed what a parlour state we were in, and that I would be mentioning them in this podcast. That you know was only a glimmer in both of our eyes. I suppose you would have known I would be doing it at Christmas, but the ashes isn't always at Christmas. Anyway, you invoke the ashes, and I'm afraid to tell you, I'm the voice of Christmas future for you, Steve, and it's not very good news.
Well, thank you for having me on yet again, Toby. I appreciate that very much. People can find out about the Hoovers from hoovers.org.uk and or on our Facebook page, or you can follow Hoovers on Twitter for that matter. We organise the annual Doctor Who convention Hooverville at Quad in Derby. It's not long since we did Hooverville 14, which was a splendid day with Paul McGann and Sylvester McCoy and Sophie Aldred and Matthew Waterhouse and a whole lot of other great guests as well. And we're already planning for next year when we've already signed up a couple of spot-on guests who I'm not going to reveal at this stage, but they are the top-notch people who we don't see that very often in British conventions. A great day is guaranteed for all. Would love to see some of you there. Thank you very much again, Toby. Goodbye.
Oh, I've been to those events and they're great. And in fact, the one in 2024 had Carol Ann Ford, Maureen O'Brien, Wendy Padbury, Katie Manning, Daisy Asford, Sadie Miller. The one the year before that had Joe Martin, Brian Hodgson. So, yeah, some really good people, and they're really nice events. And I've just done an event for Steve on Quatermass, and that was a long old day where it was real value for money with the amount of screenings that there were. And he's always a pleasure to work with, and there's always a lovely atmosphere. So, yeah, if you're passing the Derby Quad, do Steve's events. But I'm so grateful to Steve, and he's galvanised me to do some more new Who, as we stupidly call it. And yeah, I'm very grateful to him, and I really enjoyed that session, and I thought his contribution was brilliant, and I'm sure you did too. So I wish Steve a happy Christmas, and I wish you all a happy Christmas. I have to do it. I've probably done it for every single Christmas special, but who cares? And incidentally, happy Christmas to all of you at home. I actually don't know if it's happy or merry. Don't write in. I kind of I think it's happy, but then my brain goes, no, Toby, it's merry. It plays tricks on you, the brain. Am I dreaming? Am I dreaming, or am I just providing you with the stuff of nightmares? Happy Christmas! Thanks very much for listening to Happy Times and Places, which is presented by me, Toby Hadoke, and my special guest, Steve Hatcher, who is on Blue Sky. He's at Stephen Hatcher, Stephen with a ph.bsky.social. So do follow him there, and Derby Hoovers, with whom he is involved. I'm grateful to Steve and to the patrons who make these podcasts possible, and they include Ruben Herfindahl, Stephen Moffat, Peter Burns, James Curley-Smith, Peter Harness, Ronald Hayden, Rob Leonard, Christopher Meredith, Gavin McLean, Richard Straw, Neil Tate, Nick Tedston, Nick Delisle, Daniel Brennan, James Brindley, Dara Carville, Luke Ashby, Robert Davis, Andy Priestner, Steve Jenner, John McClay, Darth Selfie, Michael Page, Daniel Mybus, Colin Varney, Earworm, Alex Tilbury, Steve Appleman, Josh Bernard, Michael Page, Tim Knight, Harry Palmer, Mr. M.L. Dunstan, Brandon F. Moore, Owen Hargreaves, Timothy K. Brown, the Jason Davis, Noel Reed Jr. and William Remmers. The music is by Dave Gates, the artwork by Dylan Patterson. If you would like to become a patron, and this season of Goodwill has shown me just what a, it's been like it. I mean, since its inception, but it really seems to have hit a critical mass now of just very supportive, lovely community of people joining in. There's lots of lovely jokes flying about, but trying to key into what I want to do, which is just try and put nice stuff out there. There's some toxic conversations going on online, and they do not go on in my Patreonville. I've not particularly had to stamp on any either. It just doesn't happen there because I don't want it to. And it's a place where you get advanced releases of these podcasts. You get to contribute to these podcasts by getting the heads up about what's coming up, so you get to give your opinions and have them read out. You get your name read out on the credits. You get everything at the lowest tier, which is £3 per month, but you can go upwards if you want. There are not many inducements so to do, but if you would like to, that's appreciated. But everything's appreciated. I'm grateful to anybody that signs up, and that's why you get everything at the lowest tier, which includes some exclusive AMAs and your very own podcast, and looks behind the scenes at my DVD and Blu-ray work. So loads of different stuff, and quite frequent releases too. So do come and join patreon.com/Toby Hadoke, or you might not want to join in with the monthly thing, in which case you can go to kofi.com/Toby Hadoke and give a one-off payment whenever you like and feel like supporting me in that way. But you can also support in a non-financial way just by giving these the thumbs up, a like, a subscribe, 5-star rating, and a few lines of review everywhere you get your podcasts. It really helps tweak those algorithms. I'm on social media where I've been, bung out information about my comedy club and the things that I'm up to, often they're to do with Doctor Who, and I just try again keep it light-hearted, fun, cheery, full of arcana, and I'm on @Hadoke Podcasts and @Toby Hadoke on Twitter. I'm also on Blue Sky. I'm at @Toby.Hadoke on Instagram, and I have a Facebook comedian, fan page, I suppose you'd call it, but that's just to differentiate from my personal one, which is full up and less about work. And well, no, there's work stuff. You just go to the fan page, whatever it's called. I don't want to call it a fan page. That sounds ghastly. But it's the one. It's the one where I won't be putting photos of my kids and stuff like that. It's the one that's about work. And my work is as a stand-up comedian, and I have a weekly comedy club in Manchester called Excess Malarkey. Do check that out as well. That's all over social media too. Well, there we go. I'm going to be brief because this has already been a long one, and it is now past my bedtime, and I still just need to knit this together so that you have something released on Christmas Day. So this is one where the poor old patrons only get it a matter of hours before everybody else. They'll get it immediately, pretty much as soon as I've shut down here, and the rest of you will get it, I'm guessing, if I remember, sometime in the afternoon instead of the Doctor Who Christmas special that we don't have this year. And doesn't that seem odd and weird? And yet, I also have a school of thought in my head that it's odd and weird that Doctor Who had Christmas specials and became such a festive firmament. Anyway, happy Christmas, lots of love. I know I've said it. I'm full of the joys of the season, and I can't find 2 of my son's presents, so I need to find those as well. Anyway, let's not get into that. Happy Christmas, and seriously, genuinely, thanks, especially if you're part of that special gang of perverts who's listened as far as the end. These post-credit peccadillos. We're in one right now. Ding dong.